CancelConor, episode 12? No, 13? Oh, I don't know what that means. Maybe that's a good thing, depending on what part of the world you're from.
3 and 1 is 4, so it's a good thing. Stable
Yeah,
number.
it's a positive number. Yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh, and it's a prime number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's got to be a good thing, right?
it's an indigenous thing.
Yeah.
So both you guys qualify.
Yeah, one, it's also a Celtic thing in old lunar calendar because they had 13 months way back
Sure.
when as well, right? So
That's right.
it's all good things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, Evelle, or Aunty Evelle, I
Yes.
guess. Mrs. Lindsay, whichever way you want to be referred
No,
to.
it's not my last name.
Oh, I guess not. Hey.
No, I kept my maiden name.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a better credit rating than Bob, so.
Oh, well, that's fair.
He was a student, so really.
There you have it. Right on. Well, as always, we'll usually start with a bit of history, the direction you wanted to go with your life, the direction you actually took your life, that kind of thing. So, by all means.
Okay. I don't know. It's kind of interesting how I don't think anybody really falls into a career.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that I had a career. It's just something that you're compelled to do, some sort of destiny. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've done work on myself and all that, and it always comes out to the same thing. Meant to care for others. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, that's what I've done with my entire life, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, not to get too judgmental on gender or sex or anything, that's more of a feminine quality anyways.
Or I could be punished.
Yeah.
A different form of reincarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lesson to learn, I guess, is the way of
Lesson
looking
to
at it.
learn, yeah. So.
Because that's always part of it too, is like, well,
Yeah.
did I do something wrong or did I learn something?
Yeah. Yeah, you always hope that you learn something, yeah. So, yeah, that's what right out of high school, I worked at the sanatorium and in children's ward there, and that was interesting because
Boy, I'll say.
there was a lot of tuberculosis still in Saskatchewan
Okay.
at that time. So, and most of it was northern communities.
Okay.
And so there would be outbreaks in one particular community, and unfortunately, they didn't have the staff nor the skill set to deal with it. And so children were taken from their families in order to get better too. So
Yeah, well, you have to go dry with climates typically if you have where...
You're supposed to.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, hey?
Yeah.
But, primarily the cure for that is just rest and whatever drugs they put you on, to help with your lungs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So on one side there was an adult ward, and then on the other side was a children's ward, and underneath was a level of care. I always worked in children's ward, hey? So
Okay.
these are kids are coming in that were in pretty bad shape,
Yeah.
So, and that till this day, they, I remember their faces and kind of tears at your heartstrings, So
Yeah.
some of them would come in, they'd just be covered in lice, covered in scabies, malnourished
Mm-hmm.
with tuberculosis, so, yeah.
Yeah, somebody that's diseased is like, well, it's harder to love you because you're hard to look at, sort of thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, ooh, that's even harder to listen to sometimes because some people can make that judgment where it's like, I can push this person away and I won't feel as bad about it, is where someone like you, your empathy steps in and it's like, somebody has to take care of this person and I'll do it if nobody else will.
And also it was an education in regards to different types of First Nation communication.
Yeah. For
Because
sure.
these children would come from different communities and different belief systems as well, So we were lacking the depth of, maybe myself was lacking depth of conscious in regards to education of First Nations and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think we could have handled it a lot better nowadays.
Yeah. And it's always we should have done something different. It's like, well, it's easy to look back and say we should have done something different,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But that's the other part of it too, where we're talking late 60s, early 70s kind of area.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also, you have to be realistic about the type of technology and medical health that we could actually be given it in those days for anybody, let alone these people that are struggling with these multiple things that they're dealing with too. So,
And that time too, you have to acknowledge too that when they came from an isolated reserve, they came from an isolated reserve, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, they were still very much the othered, or looked at like, well, to a degree of subhuman even at that point still, which is odd to think that that's how we still thought within a lifetime, right?
yeah. So
But-
that was my first foray into caring for others, and you know, knew at that time, 2 years into the job, that I was going to get laid off, and I wasn't even 20. I don't think at that time. So, what are you going to do? So,
Still stick in the area that makes you feel good, that
Yeah.
you can feel like you make a difference, or
I've always wanted to do nursing, but geez, you know, I'm not that great in the sciences. I'm terrible in the sciences. So I went into social work instead. So yeah, and then I've done 2 types of residential care: young offenders, permanent placement. You know, got adoption packages ready, and my last one was in kinship, where you take children out of care, try and find family for them,
okay.
and set up an agreement with the family and do a complete home study. So, so it meets everybody's standards in regards to, well, the child is safe, because even if the aunt or uncle or grandmother or kukum is looking after them, the child's still, you know, we're responsible for the child.
Yeah.
The child is in the care of the government of Saskatchewan. So.
Oh, okay, so that whole thing kind of falls under the umbrella of social work then? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and then you're directly working for the government per se then?
Yeah. So, and even that has changed since I've retired. You know, it used to be that we'd go on reserve and do the interviews and stuff like that for the child. Now we just give the referral to the reserve. They're responsible for it. This child needs to find family on. So, and each band office has their own social work department, you know, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was the first time going out to the reserve, kind of figuring out, like, how do I go about this sort of thing? And because you were probably the same thing. It's like, what is this person doing here? And everybody else is looking at you like, oh, you're going to come here and help kind of thing? Or is it more of a actual open accepting?
No, you have to have clearance and permission to go on reserve, you know, and so you have to contact the band office and say, this is what I'm doing, and are you okay with that? I'm going to be there at this time, and then because, and sometimes they would choose at that time to be observed as well, you know, so.
Yeah, which is totally right. I mean, it's basically they're part of the world, right?
Yeah,
so.
yeah, so, you know, you always follow protocol, which was, you're much more sensitive to protocol. So coming from where I started from and where I ended up, you know, there's a you know, massive learning curve, I guess, in regards to respecting First Nations rights and, you know, abiding by their wishes, you know, so.
Yeah, especially because you're the foreigner of whatever type sort of thing like that coming in, and it's like, well, I'm here to do help. It's like, we're going to watch you do help.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
Yeah, not the first time.
Yes. I mean, we still have I mean, you look at all the children's graves that they had found, and now, you know, for this search in regards to, and that's residential
schools.
Yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
But you had the whole 60s scoop as well, so.
What was that about?
Oh, well, you know, the government in their infinite wisdom thought that they could raise children better, and so they went in, and it was called the 60s scoop, where they took basically First Nations children away from their family and put them into foster care.
Wow. Huh, it's amazing how that was just kind of also tucked under the rug. I've never heard that before.
Oh, no, well, there's they have, I believe, reached a settlement in regards to that, but there was a whole panel of people that were very active and you also have to be very, I guess, you don't have to be attached to it, but, there's probably a lot of children that don't have that, what would be the correct word? Because a lot of kids were adopted into the States as well,
Yeah.
So, do they have that knowledge that, they can be entitled to this, that, and the other thing, But they probably weren't brought up as First Nation down in the States either, so, yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about that. I mean, it sounds like something the government would do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, see, we gave you an opportunity to be, decent people, and you're just falling down, so we'll take it from you. It's like, you got to give us more than 20 minutes to figure out, like, how to be part of this society that we're brand new to. Like,
Yeah. One of my friends was a product of 60s group. So it wasn't until her adult years where she could find out who her mother was. But she was one of the fortunate ones where she had a very loving home and was adopted by this loving home. With the parents, not so much with the siblings. The siblings, they didn't want anything to do with her, or perhaps were even mean to her, but...
yeah, kids are assholes anyways.
That's right, basically. So, there's just like they're saying on the news in regards to settlements and stuff like that. I think just about they're maybe coming towards the end of that, so...
Yeah, because, throwing money at the issues and stuff isn't necessarily the way to solve them either.
No. I wish that money could be spent in developing resources and, putting it on reserve, because even though you have all these people trained to deal with it now, with trauma especially, not only are these people suffering with trauma, but, you throw addictions into that,
Yeah, one, I think, like we had talked about the last time too, is that you destroy the essence of what they know as a family even. And then, just throw money at the problem, that'll fix everything, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you unraveled our entire society, and then you expect us to just pull up our bootstraps and be like the rest of you all of a sudden? It's like, in general, like, we're a nomadic people. Like, so living in one house feels weird. Like, in our bones it feels weird. But it's like, this is where we are now, so what do you do? Right? So, no, that's interesting, because that's, there's so much to it, right? And that's why, again, there's no single solution to fix the issues. Because there's no more than one issue is the other thing.
Yeah, and everyone has an opinion, and everyone's entitled to that opinion. But, it's like, it's my opinion, and I need to impose it on you. Well, that doesn't work very well. So... But it's even with the people like in Saskatoon, like Bob and I had this discussion and stuff. We were discussing at your mom's place the other day, as with the Saskatoon Tribal Council, I set up a residential care, for those that need housing and shelter and care and stuff like that. And then there's a lighthouse in Saskatoon, which is having tremendous problems because the building needs work and... you kind of see it going, they've taken all the medical stuff out of it now, so...
That's weird.
No, it's a demise. They're slowly, I see it as...
Oh, is it trying to transition over to...
I don't know what they're trying to transition.
Or at least...
They want to move them, marginalize them, get them away from downtown, because they're going to move the arena downtown, create an entertainment district, and addicts are not entertaining. So they're going to force the issue to get rid of them somehow.
Yeah, well, that's where the whole gentrifying thing kind of comes in, where we'll just inject a bunch of money into these communities and pretty them up. It's like, okay, but you're typically taking away partly some culture, but it's like you're also just trying to, again, sweep problems under the rug that nobody really wants to think or talk about.
And when we talk about building new buildings in Saskatoon, and we have to have a new arena and stuff like that. And we argue about this, because I say, oh yeah, the Blades really do need a new home. But know, how can you call it growth when you don't look after the people that need it the most? You
Yeah.
know, I just don't get it.
Well, and that's always the funny thing about how money and power is kind of thrown around. And yeah, we have however many, $50 million to build a new stadium. Like, it's at least that much, I would think, to build one. But you can't spend $1 million on helping some level of hopelessness or feeding the kids or something
Yeah.
like that too. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, they blame it on the group of people that, you know, are less fortunate.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at the bigger picture, well, nobody's going downtown because you built all these big box malls.
Yeah.
So people are going there. They have nothing to do with it. They, you know, Joe Public wants free parking.
Yeah. Yeah, when I can see both sides of the argument on that one. It's like, well, if we build a new stadium, that'll bring more revenue and income to the city. But it's like, yes, but if you have well-fed, healthy, better educated people, they'll also make money for your city. So, like, you gotta weigh both sides properly is the other thing too, right? So.
Well, I can see it in, you know, for the building end of it, you know,
Yeah.
like you create a lot of employment for, you know, the building end of it. But at the end of it, what kind of jobs are you creating for people to work in the arena selling t-shirts? I can see a bunch of sports bars being built up around the arena because
Yeah.
that's atypical of every city, right? You know, and with, you know, the sports bars and the alcohol, and then wouldn't that attract
Well, larger shows and bigger names and types of events that can happen in those things, so that draws in more money and revenue as well.
but does it?
So,
Because I'm looking at going, you know, I would love to go see this person and love to go see that person, but am I going to spend, and of course we go as a couple, am I going to spend $800 to go be entertained?
yeah.
Because that's what these, you know, like this comedian coming, I thought, well, gee, he'd be really good to see, he's really good. $346 a ticket?
Holy. Yeah, that's a little much.
You know, I mean, that's prime, you're on the floor and stuff like that.
But is he that funny though?
And do I need to, you know, like now with inflation and people are watching their money,
Yeah.
you know, I would love to go see any number of acts, but no, I'm not going to spend $200, $250, $300 on a ticket.
Yeah.
You know, that's just way, way out of my comfort league. It'd have to be Bruce Springsteen. That's the only person that is on my checklist that I haven't seen. So
I'm not a fan of him, but I understand the draw.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's yeah. I mean, that's always the things like, well, how much are we willing to spend for entertainment? Because I used to think too that, you know, all this money, like the states in particular, like the leaders of entertainment, and they have the strongest economy because of it. It's like, well, this is all fluff. It doesn't actually mean anything in the world. It's like, well, it's not true. Not only does it generate revenue, like if we don't have television programs or sports or whatever, well, what did people do 150 years ago? They sat around and looked at the wall. They read a book. They tried to figure out how to play an instrument. Like, entertainment's actually hugely valuable to our mental state and stuff too, and some level of interconnection with the rest of the world. And you know, if your team does well, then you have another community to be a part of. So it's like, no, there's actually a lot of value in entertainment, but how much is correct? Because do we need to be paying, you know, ball players $100 million every couple of years to play ball, or a musician? Yeah, like they're going to get 1 billion likes on or views on YouTube or something like that. Do we need to pay them these exorbitant amounts of money? But
yeah. And then people actually believe that like kind of lifestyle is achievable for them. You know, like it's, you know, everyone's going to be a Kardashian.
yeah,
I saw a person at the airport, and she was wearing one of these full body suits, you know, like what the Kardashians always wear. And
Yeah.
oh, sweet Jesus, you know, like be an original. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I want to be treated distinctly, and everyone needs to see how unique I am, but treat me equal as everybody else too.
So yeah, I don't know how much we really need it, because I like to be entertained as much as the next guy, but you know, I'd love to go to see different games and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
what's the cheapest ticket you could get to a Blades game? I don't know.
Yeah.
$30.
Yeah, nosebleed kind of seats sort of thing. And,
Yeah. Lacrosse too. That's a lot of fun. You know.
yeah.
Football. Yeah. I'd like to go to a football game. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, but in Saskatchewan, you got to get to Regina to see football, or unless it's a college team that you're watching. But, well, I shouldn't say, like, the Huskies do pretty well, so that's actually pretty entertaining football. So that's fair. But same thing. I mean, things there don't happen for free.
No.
Right. So still has to add value to the economy and to the school is the other thing. You know, even if the students themselves or the players aren't getting the money, it's like, well, nobody's doing this for free.
No, this is true, and I bet a lot of them have scholarships, and I bet it's no different than, you know, what goes on in the States to attract young people to. Of course, they're much more brutal in their hosting gigs.
Yeah.
You know, to attract the best of the best, sir. So.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, well, yeah, the States is a lot more in your face about a lot of things but I mean, free market capitalism allows that too, right? So that's definitely part of it, but.
And I sometimes, you know, I feel bad for even watching football because these guys are brutalizing their bodies and their lifespan is going to be shorter because of all the concussing out and, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the other part of it.
Go Riders.
You're doing it for the glory, right? You might be in a wheelchair and shaking constantly by the time you're 50, but I mean, the good old days, if you can remember them, were there. So.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, well, then that's definitely a big difference between the CFL and the NFL, because a lot of especially the linesmen, they have to have full-time jobs outside of football.
For sure.
Right, where it's a little easier to get by in the States, but at the same time, you're also up against a lot bigger, heavier people that are going to do more damage to your body. But it's like, wow, you're making millions of dollars, but as you're getting brutalized, it's like, well, pick your battle. Like, you can sit on the sidelines with the rest of us, or you can be part of the game, but it's like anything, there's inherent risk in everything we do.
True.
So.
Yes.
The average career in all sports is 3 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So.
You twist your knee the wrong way, you can't run the same way ever again, right? So that's the end of it.
A former Rough Rider is now our Minister of Social Services.
Well, there you go. So.
I'll just leave that.
But all the more reason, right, that they're able to get into the things that they want to see changing, because football is good, but it's not a lifelong career for most people. Like, you can maybe coach a bit or get on TSN to do the sports desk thing, but
True that. Yeah.
most of these people, well, you have to have a personality of a certain type to be able to do some of those jobs too, right? And
You'd be good at that.
I can yell at people, sure.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, you'd be good behind a sports desk or a commentator and stuff like that.
Commentating for certain things, I'd have to get into the sports again. Is the other things. I'm not really into regular sports. I don't mind playing them, but to just sit and watch a game it's tough sometimes. I've even kind of fallen out of football, and it's like, always loved watching the Rough Riders, but I haven't played myself for years, so you kind of just get out of it for a bit, and then there's a bit of a break or whatever sort of thing like that, and then teams change, and also you don't know who all these people are, and it's like, well, I'm kind of just out of it now. But with that said, though, too, it's nice to be living in Calgary and then go down to a game every once in a while, especially when the Riders are in town, because like the middle is all red, and then all the fringes are outside are just solid green, and you know, everybody has like respectful cheering for their own team, but there's a bit of tension some days, though.
Yes, yeah. I would think that a lot of people that live in Calgary are from Saskatchewan and remain Saskatchewan fans.
Yeah, well, my family's a great example of that.
Yeah.
Of the 4 boys, 3 of us live in Calgary.
Yeah.
So that makes good sense why Saskatchewan's population has been, what, 1 million for about 100 years now?
Is that right? It hasn't gone anywhere?
Hasn't changed in like 100 years. Well, that's what they told us in high school, I think, that Saskatchewan's basically had about 1 million people for around 100 years.
Huh.
So it's pretty interesting, but...
Well, it's our little secret.
Yeah.
You know, shh, don't tell anybody about it, you know, because it's a nice lifestyle. I mean, we're in Calgary there for a couple days. We only saw part of the city, you know, but certainly the new library downtown.
Beautiful building.
Holy, that's pretty spectacular, hey?
Yeah, well, and another thing with newer integrated technology and stuff like that, but then nice sitting areas, nice quiet rooms, and yeah, more books than you'd ever be able to read in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
But then same thing, because it's their being aware of where they are, sort of thing like that. They have some levels of native art and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
around, but that's actually something I wanted to ask you. How do you feel about the acknowledgements that they do before, well, sporting events or plays or anything like that? It's like, we acknowledge that we're on the Blackfoot people's land or on the Cree land or
mm-hmm.
whatever sort of thing. Because I know when I was at a play and this white guy's telling me about, you know, we want to acknowledge that we're here and we're on the Blackfoot's people downtown Calgary. It's like, so what do you want to do? Give it back to them?
Like
So
that's gonna happen.
You're in the
right?
middle of a city with skyscrapers, like,
Mm-hmm.
and not only that is insane. It kind of just like throwing it in your face, like, oh, look what you used to have. You know, this beautiful
Mm-hmm.
Bow Valley where this river ran through and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. To me, it seems more insensitive to bring it up than it does to
But
try to give the acknowledgement sort of thing too, right? But
But if you don't,
it's also wrong, right? If
Yeah.
you don't, right?
Yeah.
So
mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a weird one. That's kind of why I wanted to ask you about
Mm-hmm.
it. So
Yeah, I think they have to. I think they really do have to, because so many of the treaties were violated anyway. So I think really you have to. I know a lot of people are probably very tired about hearing about it, but you know, we can't put blinders on. So
yeah.
if it's every single time that they put it in your face, and you know, it should be in our face, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea of this, some level of reconciliation that's supposed to be happening, but again is saying like, oh, our thoughts and prayers are with you. It's like, thanks. Does lots. You gonna make an Instagram post while you're at it? Like, yeah, pretty much, right? So,
Yeah.
but I mean, with that said though too, I mean, when you say like, well, the natives are a conquered people, I mean, it sucks, but it's the way it is. It's like, ooh, is that the right way to say it? But it's like at the same time, like, well,
A lot of people have that belief, though.
it's like, well, what else do we say? I mean, they didn't have a sense of ownership like a lot of the European societies did, sort of thing like
Yes.
that. It's like, well, you can't take the land; it's not going to go anywhere. It's like, well, that's not what we meant. We're going to take you off the land, and it's ours now.
Yeah,
That's what we meant,
Yeah.
sort of thing, right? But
They didn't believe in ownership, you know,
You
so
know.
you can't own land, you know.
the other thing that I always try to draw the point, it's like it's because it's a new thing that's happened. Like nobody cares about the Babylonians or the Assyrians or the ancient Greeks or Romans even. They're all conquered people, and they had these massive, beautiful civilizations. You know, so it's like, I understand this is a new one and we're still dealing with the problems, but it's like throughout history, we're doing far better than anybody else ever has.
Yeah, but you look at what happened to the Syrians, you know, just recently. Nobody did anything about this race being, you know,
Extinguished?
yes,
Yeah.
not helping them whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, it's terrible what's going on in Ukraine, don't get me wrong, but nobody did anything for the Syrians, you know. And I mean, that was going on when we were in Egypt and stuff like that. So it's just, we're still eradicating people, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, and it's easy with the idea that, again, it's like, well, they're subhuman. They don't really deserve to live. And that to me, that's such a sad way to see everything, because a human typically is at the top of the food chain regardless of their situation. Like, we're smarter than just about every other thing on the planet. Yeah, but it takes a community to raise a child, and it also depends on where that community is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like, well, if we're on the other side of the Gaza Strip than you, that means we're better than you are. Or, you know, we're on the right side of the pyramid, sort of thing like that. So, same thing, right? Or same thing here. It's like, well, your skin is slightly lighter than somebody else's, so you're better than them. It's like, yeah, but is that the right way to look at things? Because we're continually us versus them sort of thing all the time.
But isn't that ingrained in us?
We can't help ourselves. It's the other part. So it's, again, it's human nature, or
Right.
well, life in general. Like, life has to consume something else to continue its existence. But it's like, we should be better than that. I mean, the whole reason why we have this big free prefrontal cortex is so that we can think better than everything else too, right?
But then you throw religion into it, you know, and so
Yeah.
this Christian believes that, you know, the Muslim is wrong, and this Muslim doesn't understand why you're doing that, and then you got, they purposely want to divide us.
Yeah.
I see it as that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think Bob had made that point the other day at the barbecue, is that it's the individual is easy to talk to. But if you try to talk to a group, or you try to paint a lot of people with a fairly wide brush, it's like, well, they're all idiots, or they're all extremists, or all this, that, the other thing. It's like, well, sure, groups are, you know, big, dumb, panicky animals. An individual is a smart person, which is, but how often are you able to sit down one-on-one with somebody and be able to have this level of conversation with them? Or is it easy just to, like, I'm going to put you in this box and you're a piece of shit because of it, sort of thing too, right? And that's,
Well, and maybe I'm guilty of that too, because
we all are. We all have prejudice.
you know, I'm embarrassed as to what Canadians did in regards to that freedom convoy. I don't understand it at all. I look at that and I watch that and I think these people have a low education. They maybe have some mental health problems, stir a little bit of alcohol in there, and
Your privilege is showing.
but you know, am I guilty of that? Is that, you know, because it just burns me to no end, all these people that are complaining about vaccines, human rights being their human rights being violated and stuff like that, and yet they don't give two shits about someone passed out drunk on the street, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. So
Yeah.
am I guilty of that? Because I see them as, fuck, are you ever stupid?
Yeah. But it's the same thing with all the people in the convoy. It's like, well, they're taking our fundamental freedoms away, and it's not like it was an unpeaceful protest. We just wanted them to talk to us, and they couldn't even give us the courtesy of coming in and talking to us. You know, and it's like most places in the world, trucks bring foods, like, well, everything. But literally, if you live in a city, everything showed up either on a truck or a train. And then now you're trying to make their lives that much more difficult for people that are not paid well in the first place.
No.
And you're forcing them to do things to go across borders and stuff like that. And
Yeah, but I think the majority of truckers who were sincerely trucking were compliant. This was still a fraction group, you know.
For how many thousands of people showed up in Ottawa, I think it's a pretty good slice of
But
the
I
world.
don't
So
The Canadian Truckers Association disavowed that Freedom Convoy because all their truckers were vaccinated because both countries, Canada and the United States, required it. They kept driving. These guys were on a holiday. It was all political.
yeah,
Right.
well, for sure it was. But I mean, the same thing with them trying to fund themselves and the government taking down their GoFundMe accounts. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How much of an overreach is that? You stole however many millions of dollars from people that you should have nothing to do with.
They didn't steal anything, and then that money was coming from the United States. They were fomenting a
Regardless, though.
rebellion. No,
Why should they
taking away anybody's rights?
Right, well, but
It's like
I mean,
vaccine
it's just...
wasn't taking away anybody's rights.
Well, the thing is, though, too, is the part of it is like, but how can they take it? Is the other thing. Like, should the government can just walk in and take whatever they want
Because it
when
was
they feel it's
an illegal
convenient?
occupation.
Right.
They stepped
Well, and-
over the bounds of the law.
And it-
At that point, then
Again, and that's
government
actually
act.
a point I was going to make. It's like, well, everybody has rights until they call you a terrorist, basically, and then you don't have any rights at all. It's like, I just wanted to talk to somebody. Why am I not allowed to do that? It's like my local MP wasn't going to talk to me. I had questions and concerns about my own health. The doctors told me one thing, but this other doctor told me completely the opposite. So it's like I'm getting conflicting information. I look at the news, they say conflicting things.
And then I read
so-
and I self-diagnose myself on Google, and what Google education provides has made me a qualified doctor. You know?
Yeah, well, and that's the other part too, is where some people will read a headline. It's like, oh, see, this justifies what I said. Well, if you read the article, it's actually completely opposite of what it says there too, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's always the thing too, is like, again, there's going to be opposition on what happens. I mean, on the point of a protest, I mean, we're supposed to be living in a free country and have the right to protest.
A protest is one thing, and occupation is something completely different.
Oh, for
I
sure.
protested a lot. You go there, call the Prime Minister names, you wave your placard, then you listen to speeches and you go home. You made your point.
Yeah.
Those guys, that was something different, and it was funded by the United States.
Well, there's a lot of that too, for sure. But I mean, at the same token, though, too, I mean, there's a lot of people that were there for whatever, because I mean, it turns into an umbrella thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden the media is like, oh, see, this guy's running around with their swastikas and this, that, and the other thing. Like, okay, yeah, these 3 people on the side compared to the thousands of people that are comfortably sitting in their vehicles, and sure, there was a noise violations and stuff that were happening, sort of stuff, but there's also, you know, a big snowfall that happened, and it's like, oh, how are we going to be able to get around and do stuff, sort of thing like that, and then all these people show up with, or pull shells off their trucks and clean roadways. You know, and that's the other part of it too, is where the nice thing about social media is that you can see more of what's going on.
That's
because
true.
it's like everybody's posting something
But
about
is that
it.
too much information? Is this why we're reacting?
Right, and right now we're all getting emotional about it,
Yeah.
right? So
And does that cause a reaction? Is that a positive or a negative?
yeah.
I don't
Right.
know.
Well, and that's kind of the point of whether it's protest or occupation, but I mean, some people also see it, it's like, well, the thing is slow change and being told what you to do, sort of thing like that. This, you know, democracy turns into a dictatorship, not overnight, but, you know, over slow, easy changes. Like, well, just this little bit. Like, well, just this little bit. It's like, well, how many little bits do you take till you're not really in a country you recognize anymore? You know, and that, I understand that part of kind of the pushback, sort of thing like that. It's like, well, the Nazis didn't start out as villains, sort of thing like that. And it's like, oh, jump into Nazis right away. It's like, well, yeah, though, that's kind of the point, because it didn't just happen overnight.
Well, you can look at it, you know, going overseas as a young person, and, you know, you always wore your Canada flag on your backpack so that you'd be separated from the Americans, and you were, you know, a good person all around because you were truly a Canadian, right?
Yeah.
I don't see that anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Well, partly because the Americans put Canadian flags on stuff, so that
Yeah.
they get treated better than they would have.
they would do. But just as general, I see Canada's more fractured than, you know, we're
Yeah.
not united in anything, and
Yeah.
you know,
Well, there's talk about separating the West, basically, like Manitoba West is all separating to become their own country. It's yeah, because division always makes things better, right, guys?
that's right. That's right. And Alberta would be. You'd have to admit, Alberta would be going, yeah, that's good. We don't want to support Quebec anymore.
Well, exactly, right, and that's there's so many ways to look at that sort of thing. It's like, well, we would be fine. Like, well, what about the industry? It's like we would have money to build our own,
Yes.
and I guarantee you the states would want to trade with us, sort of thing. But it's like, yeah, division's not the way to go. I mean, Quebec wanted to separate for lots. It was 95 was the last referendum,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like, it's not going to solve anything.
No.
I mean, the Newfies were happy because it's like, well, I'll shorten my drive to Ontario by like 4 hours. So.
There you, but you know, BC has their own opinion too.
Yeah.
You know, like we were traveling there, just talking to, you know, regular Joes living in BC, and they're just tired of Alberta.
Yeah.
You know, so and poor Manitoba doesn't have a pot to piss in.
No, everybody forgets about it.
There's a reason why.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. Manitoba has lots of lovely spots, but
Great Lake country's out there,
oh
actually.
yes, and that is part of my heritage as well. You know,
Yeah.
so. But it's kind
Well,
of like a forgotten kind of province, you know, and so is Saskatchewan in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, you know, if you're from Saskatchewan, you're
A hick.
yeah.
Yeah.
In reality, we're the most traveled individuals are the most traveled in
Yeah.
probably the world, you know, because what do we do in wintertime?
Whole lot of nothing.
And we get out of town, you know, so.
Yeah, if you want to stick around, you can, but yeah, it's better to go and travel and see the world. Because,
Yes, yeah.
hey, look, it's flat over there. It's flat over there, too. Oh, it's covered in snow. Yeah, it's still covered in snow.
But I was happy to see those horizons when I came back from the mountains, so
Yeah.
that's too, so.
Yeah, well, and even working with some people that are from, well, working with this guy that was from England, and he's like, I can't believe how big the sky is out here. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, I mean, there's more hills and stuff on the island, which England is, but at the same time, like, we're right on the water. So to see a clear day rarely happens. But when you do, like, you're kind of in the clouds a lot of the time because everything's so covered in moisture and humidity there. That's hundreds of kilometers away. You can see, a thunderstorm that's building, you know, at the northern border, basically. It's this big, beautiful thing. Sometimes you see flashes of light come out of it, but like, I've never seen a sky this big before.
We had actually run into it. Was he from England? That fellow with the dog sled? Yeah. We were just walking in Riverbank in the wintertime, and this guy had a whole dog sled, and he was going through the riverbank there, and he had stopped, I think, to fix the harness or whatever, and we got talking to him, and he just loves Saskatchewan. He just loved the wintertime.
It was minus 35.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this.
I love this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go further up north, he said, because he just loved it.
That's awesome. Well, that is the nice thing about there being so few people around, is that everything stays really pristine a lot of the time, or like you have a fresh coat of snow on stuff, and it has something magical about that even blanket of snow just covering everything, and it's
pretty.
Yeah, it's really nice to have those things, but at the same time, after a while, it's like, come on, it's April. Do we need another fresh coat of snow?
Yeah. Hold off to the May long weekend. Just wait and see.
Yeah, don't plant anything before May long. So.
That's really. Bob's cousin was saying that by law, where they live in BC, that their winter tires have to remain on till the end of May.
Yeah, that makes sense. For your own safety, basically.
For your own safety, yeah.
Yeah. Well, even, in the Coca-Cola, I think there's parts where it's like you don't have to put your chains on your tires, but you better have chains, though, because it might turn to shit before you even knew it happened.
That's right.
And there's some days, I've driven through there in, the hell was that? Late January, I think it was. So the rest of the flatland provinces and stuff are damn cold and into that Arctic chill sort of thing like that. And you go out there and it's -2 and it's kind of slush and stuff that's coming out of the sky, and you hit your brakes and you slide for 200 meters, but it's like, oh, I'm going to hit somebody, but we're all sliding down the hill pretty evenly, so it's kind of okay.
Is it really? Oh, that would scare me to death, it would. Yeah, I admit I'm a prairie person, so I like the flatlands. So.
Yeah, well, in some parts you get stopped by the maintainers and stuff, and, well, sorry, I'm from Alberta, what's going on? Oh, there's a bit of an avalanche ahead, so it's going to take a bit of time to clear it off. Oh, you seem pretty calm, and oh yeah, that's normal. So, okay, no problem. I'll just go do some squats, I guess, and hang out.
They were sending me pictures of this big boulder that fell on the road just after we had left. Yeah, you don't really put that into your equations as when you're driving and stuff like that.
Is it somebody under there? Or?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's always the interesting thing about perception of time. It's like, how close was I actually to getting that boulder on top of me, or right behind me, or right in front of me, or I crashed into it, sort of thing. Yeah, time and space is a weird thing.
Yeah. And certainly, we certainly saw a large number, because the Golden to Banff is shut down, right?
Yeah, they're doing major work on there again.
Yeah, so a lot of trucks on the highway through the Kootenay.
The pass?
Kootenay Pass.
Right, yeah.
Or,
yeah.
It wasn't Kootenay Pass,
Wow.
Kootenay Park.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Wow. A lot of semis.
Yeah, well, same thing, right? We're taking everything from the coast off the sea ships, basically, and bringing it inland, so.
I remember, what year did we go to New Mexico?
2016.
16, okay, and we're driving through, going from, is it Gallup? Back to Albuquerque, and lots of trucks. Well, it's Route 66, trucks.
Yeah.
And this guy had in the back of his truck, if you don't like my driving, quit buying stuff.
Well, basically.
Yep.
Don't buy shit.
Yeah, that's always funny. Yeah, people are pissing and moaning about the environment or something like that, but they have an Amazon account and Skip the Dishes account and all these other things. Like, well, get off your ass and support local, maybe,
Mhm.
you know, point the finger at everybody else, but.
Yeah, and how many people would actually do that? I suppose they wouldn't do that until they were absolutely forced to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or there's some type of actual food shortage where we create chaos within 72 hours at most.
Well, isn't that what Russia's trying to do right now?
Yeah. Oh yeah, like always, you
Because of
install supply lines that makes mayhem happen. You don't even have to fight the people, then they'll fight
No.
themselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I try not to comment on any of the Ukraine-Russian stuff because I don't really know anything about it. And for me to make an opinion it'd be useless. I don't know what's going on over there. And it's, well, ancient history that's being tossed up in so many different directions. And again, 100 opinions on both sides about what's happening. And it's a mess.
It's a mess.
That's pretty much what it is. So
Mhm.
I'd rather not be dragged into it because it's like it doesn't necessarily affect me per
But
se.
it may at one time.
It
you know,
might, but I
depending
mean-
on how long it goes on. You know, like.
Yeah.
I mean, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe there, so
Yeah.
a lot of.
Well, you wouldn't think like a single boat getting stuck in the Suez Canal would change the world either, right? So, but it did. You know, so it's.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, well, and I guess kind of back to the point too, where everything shows up on a truck and it's like freedom convoy. Like, oh, well, what are we fighting about then exactly? Like, aren't we all supposed to be, again, work together with this stuff? But it's, yeah, who's right? What is right, even?
Well, yes. There's a lot of blurred lines.
Right,
And I
so-
think the pandemic blurred them even further
Yeah.
because people are really confused and don't trust,
Yeah.
a little apathetic, and very confrontational.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I hear trigger for a lot of stuff too. And one, more often than not, it's follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
If you can look at all these lines that are being drawn between everybody, but what's really happening at the end of the day? It's the rich versus poor.
Always.
It's always that.
But they want to divide us even further, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, and that to get back to, you know, downtown Saskatoon, you know, and their blanket statements about, you know, it's taking away business, we don't need to see these people, you know, they're, you know. Bottom line is, I bet any one of those people that they're complaining about didn't wake up or didn't get born into, yeah, I'm going to grow up and become an addict. I'm going to grow up and be poor, you know?
Yeah.
That's not part of their plan either, you know? So, yeah, so there's no empathy, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big part of a lot of the issues that there's not just the othering, but it's, well, just pull up your bootstraps. Or it wasn't that hard for me to do it. Like, well,
Walk it off.
yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, not everybody has the same shake of the world
No.
sort of thing. And yeah, and I mean, well, that's usually what it happens. Yeah, you see immigrants that come in to Canada from war-torn places, or yeah, people that have left the reserve and made a life for themselves, sort of thing like that. There's a lot of work that has to be done to get to those parts, but those people are almost always happier and more appreciative of everything they have because they know what it takes to get those things.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And people complain about the immigrants coming and they're taking our jobs and they're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, really? Come on, you
Yeah,
know?
Russell Peters talked about that. It's like, what, you wanted to open a dollar store? Like,
I know, I was standing in line actually at the dollar store and everything's automated except for one little teller over there. The
Yeah.
other ones just help the seniors with the quick cash going. And this woman was becoming so frustrated. She says, why aren't there people working here? Why isn't this happening? Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm standing in line thinking, did you put an application in at the dollar store?
yeah,
Bet you didn't.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of the automating a lot of the world and stuff too. Hey, how's it going, Zach?
Good, yourself?
Good, man. Living it up. But yeah, like automating a lot of the world. There's with a lot of stuff. I mean, there's always the talk. It's like, well, we're going to be starting to automate certain things, so like trucking jobs will become less and less important. So it's like, well, why don't these truckers just learn how to be coders? You know, they can code computers instead. It's like, oh yeah, guy in his 50s is just going to learn how to use a computer all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and but like anything, there's always pushback with every step up of technology. So sure, there's definitely going to be people that are disenfranchised by certain things, but there's also more and more jobs and industries that are coming into fruition because we never knew that we'd need computer analysts at some point. Like, we never knew that, you know, shutting down libraries was going to be part of, you know, the internet. But at the same time, there's so much more access to information because of the internet. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it can be, obviously, but there's a lot of good things that come out of that sort of stuff. And it's going to be difficult, and yes, some people are going to get pushed to the wayside, sort of thing like that too. But again, it opens up more industry and more time to do other things. I mean, we don't all have to be in a mine swinging pickaxes. You know, we have machines that can do that, so it frees us up for physical time and mental time to be able to do more and other things. You know, and well, I think even Neil deGrasse Tyson said, like, it's just a point of privilege that people like me have time to be able to look up into the sky and ask what if, or, you know, like, there's how many centuries or millennia did it take us to get to that point where we can actually stand and have the time to look into the sky, and we're not just worried about, you know, where's my next meal coming from.
Yes. Isn't that true? And you think back to, I mean, you know, your grandmother and what she has witnessed throughout her life, and I think back to my family and stuff like that. You know, well, yeah, how hard did they work on the farm? How hard did they have to do to raise a family? They worked really hard, really. They did, and all of it wasn't all good.
No, for sure not.
No, you know, and I look back in my childhood and being raised by an alcoholic. Yeah,
it's not great.
I got issues.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to, you know, control situations. I tend to not trust situations, but you know, that's part of, you know, I recognize that as part of my upbringing. You know, I'm hypervigilant. You know, and there's triggers. Everybody has triggers, and everybody has their own hardships. You know, we're all equal in that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, you kind of came from a disruptive, dysfunctional home, and then on the other side, I grew up with like loving, caring parents. Routine and structure is great, but it's like I'm lazy as shit because of it, because I don't want to do all that stuff. Like, I've already done it. It's boring. It's frustrating. It's, you know, it's like we always do the opposite of what our parents have showed us half the time, sort of thing. And it's partly pushing against authority, but it's partly like we all don't want to really grow up to a degree.
Is that the problem? Because, you know, there's issues, you know, in regards to, well, people have been talking about, and do you consider yourself a child of the millennium? Are you millennium?
I'm technically a millennial because I was born in '81, so I'm the very first year, I think, of the millennials. But I mean, because I'm the youngest of my family and my parents were born in the 50s, sort of thing like that, I get along with people that are in their 50s and 60s better than I do with my own generation, supposedly. But I think that also has to do with, again, growing up in a farm on Saskatchewan and then being a construction worker, where people understand, like, the sweat off your brow and the, you know, the strength of your work is more important than what you say a lot of the time.
It's a measure of a man, isn't it? What you can provide.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of definitely have a lot of the old world mentality that was instilled in me, but at the same time, it's easy to be able to talk with people that are in charge of things, or, you know, if you're going to a job site that people are running, it's like, well, I can talk to the older people really easily because they understand the value of work, sort of thing too. You know, and you go shake hands with somebody that's 60 years old, and his hands are still like made out of steel fibers or cable, sort of thing. It's like, okay, this guy also knows how to work. But you shake somebody's hand that's all soft and delicate, it's like, oh, we're gonna have issues.
Well, there's issues right now because of the pandemic, and people are, and is it because they have more self-discovery? I would hope so, but you know, they don't want to work full time.
Yeah.
You know, they only want to work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so that there's a word for that now, and they're called twats.
This is a new phrase that's come around? So.
No, it's not a new phrase, but it does fit perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So is that the right thing? is it because they're doing self-discovery? Are the other 2 days, maybe one day is self-discovery, maybe another day is volunteering, helping? I don't know. You can answer that question better than me. And we're generational as to, I don't want to work full time.
Well, nobody wants to work full time. That's never changed. It's just.
But I want you to support me in this dream of not working full time. So can you help Mom and Dad? Not Zach. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's a lot of people, adults that I know that are experiencing this. Yeah. Can't you lend me $20,000?
Yeah. Well, and some of that is too. It's a lot of parents are willing to coddle some of that. Is sometimes it's good because there's, again, like you said, we all grow up with some level of difficulties or direct traumas and stuff like that we do actually need to unpack, because if you don't, it's going to turn into some sort of physical or psychological issue, right? And it's going to come out one way or the other. But there's also a lot of people that have a pretty decent life, and they're just being flaky.
Okay.
Right. So, and again, you have to be able to talk to the individual to see which side of that they really land on. Because again, it's a matter of spectrum. Like, there is no black and white for anything really. Right. So another question. Okay, you see that as being, some of them being a little flaky. Do you think that has to do with entitlement? Some of it's entitlement. Some of it's proof that people that go like, oh, well, your privilege is showing kind of stuff, as I made a joke about earlier. It's like, living in Canada is a privilege for everybody. Like people, women that are in their 20s and stuff and going on about women's rights and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, you have no idea what struggle is. You can't fathom the shit that your parents have gone through, and never mind your grandparents. Because until the 70s, a woman could get a credit card by herself.
No.
That's the same as like Gug. She's having issues with not buying things, and she can't really afford to live where she is. But it's like, well, I lost my bank card. Like, what am I going to do? It's like, well, just go to the bank and get another one. Well, I don't know if they'll do that. It's like, wow, you're really stuck in an age that's not here anymore.
Yeah.
But how do you tell somebody that's 90 years old, you're your own person, you can literally do anything you want? But
you'd have to tell that to me as well.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm 28 years older than you, so I can play games on the computer. I can send emails. I can do that thing and stuff like that. But really, in technology,
yeah. Well, and to a degree, like the male-dominated world sort of thing like that where, yeah, typically the woman would stay at home, take care of kids and take care of the house sort of thing, and the man would go out and work. There's nothing wrong with having some level of tradition or something like that, but that's also not your experience.
Yeah.
Right? So you're already kind of somewhat into that newer age of way of living, and again, a privilege that you had the opportunity to do that sort of thing like that too. But at the same time, though, too, it's like, well, did I get to spend as much time with my kid raising them as I wanted to, sort of thing too. So it's like, everything you do, there's a counter to what happens sort of thing too, right?
Yes,
so and that's
true.
And to a degree, Mom was more than happy to stick at home and do stuff for us, sort of thing like that too. But it's like, I got a late start to getting into the world for a career, and she's the same way. It's like, well, now that I'm retired, I barely have enough money to cover what I'm doing, and now I'm selling the farm and trying to move to a city that I have no idea what I'm going to do. And the only reason I can even move there is because my boys, like me and my brother's going to be there. And there's going to be a lot of a learning curve for her at 68 years old.
But
so
I consider that to be particularly brave.
It's a huge step, and she's going to be shit scared for a while. But the same thing is because has that older world mentality where I don't know if I can do this sort of thing like that, or there's so much of the world that's just scary to me. But in a good way, luckily Dad passed away 9 years ago, so she's been forced to do certain things that it's like, oh, well, I can do this. Before I would just put my hands and let my dad take care of it. But now she's forcing herself into these uncomfortable situations, and it's like, oh, well, I can do these things. Oh, I'm actually way more capable than I thought. Right? And I think that's the other part of it, is that regardless if it's millennials or younger or whatever, it's it's the amount of struggle that you're willing to push through. Because I think that's the other thing, is that life is defined, human life, well, life in general, is defined by struggle.
Yeah, and I think of, you know, Cheryl and her siblings, you know, Dad died very young. Mom had to do it on her own.
Yeah.
I think Mom Grandma did a pretty good job of raising three strong women.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, such that they argue about trivial things.
And their opinion is right, and you're entitled to it.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, it's slightly different than me, so you're completely wrong.
Yes. Yes, you don't know, we don't have to get that passionate about it. No, yeah, so, I mean, these are the things that, you know, I'm kind of observing, you know, that, yeah, maybe I'm out of touch, and I think, I don't want a cell phone. I had cell phones at work, and, you know, you're on the go, and I just don't need it. But, you know, every time, you know, the kids are over, it's in their face, the cell phone, you know?
Yeah, it's our third hemisphere of our brains, basically, and it's good for a lot of things, but it's also, well, our attention is what's for sale.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the advertisements and shit they're trying to sell us, it's our data.
Yeah.
So they can be more exactly to
manipulate us.
Who and what you are, and that's just it. Like, we're very malleable creatures, and it's very easy. Well, again, we almost got into a fist fight over the Freedom Convoy, which had nothing to do with any of us, really. Like,
I understand your point. You know, it is a valid point. You know, my point still is, you know, like, I just don't get it. You know, so, and I do have some. I find struggles like that aren't real struggles. You know, that are kind of influenced by negative forces, I'll say, you know, just, we shouldn't put our passion into that. And I see a lot of people putting their passion into it.
Yeah. One, it's addictive is the other problem with it, is because it's so easy. Like, the entire world is literally in the palm of your hand now. But what version of the world are you looking at?
I know.
And that's the other part too, because you can go through, like, your Facebook account or your Instagram or whatever sort of thing like that. And one, I have a couple of different accounts on Instagram. Like, one is more specifically for my kung fu stuff, but then I have one for, well, more so for the podcast sort of thing like that. So I have a lot of health and wellness stuff on one, and then I have stuff that kind of leads more to the controversial side of society. And one is fun and it's empowering, it feels good. The other one just feels like a cesspool of bullshit. So it's like, I post stuff and I try not to look at too much of it, and then I just get off the phone altogether, because it's like, it doesn't feel good. But then you see, you know, horses trampling people at protests, and it's like, oh, how did this not turn into a civil war already? And it's like, whoa, the fact that it hit me that hard is part of the problem.
Yeah. And there was an incident at the Academy Awards. Where Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
Tried to stay on that one too.
Well, I have personal experience with that. You know, as
Will Smith slapped you?
No, but someone else did.
Okay.
And so it was a trigger.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why it was a trigger, because I didn't have that memory. But then that memory came back, and I think, fuck you, Will Smith. That was buried for fucking years. You know? And how dare you make me feel that way?
At the same time, though, too, it's like, what was that doing sitting there in the darkness and stuff? Is it good that I recognize what happened? Is there something I should maybe think about a little bit and deal with, perhaps? Because, no, I could have stayed buried. I get that.
You know, and it's just like, when you talk about trauma and stuff like that, you know, and people always assume that sexual abuse is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to a child.
Yeah.
And a lot of children can recover quite well with that trauma. And it'll always be a trauma, don't get me wrong. But the biggest thing is domestic violence.
Yeah.
The impact that it has on children and families.
Yeah, well, especially on shaping young, impressionable minds.
Yes.
That's a level of stress that kind of, well, the gal that I dated 3 times is similar. Similar to your situation, kind of, where alcoholic father, and he wasn't really around, and then he did take off. Then the mother got remarried to a cop, but he was abusive and kind of a drunk too. And you know, and you just your whole life is just a series of triggers. Everything's a trigger. You're just living in anxiety. Like she had enough anxiety where it was causing her physical problems, or just to see her sitting down, like she just looked rigid all the time. Because she even said, it's like, yeah, relaxing isn't really relaxing. It's just waiting for something to go wrong. It doesn't feel good to just not be doing something.
No, because you have to be hyper vigilant. Yeah.
Right? Because anything could go wrong, and if I'm not taking care of it, it's my fault. Is where I'm completely the other side of that, where it's just like, I'm living such a good, comfortable life. I'm gonna have an afternoon nap. It's like, shouldn't you pay your taxes? Like, nah, I'll get to it.
So yeah, I mean, when you look at everything that's happening in the world, everyone has experienced their own trauma, you know. And I think the trauma for First Nation people is the fact that it occurred such a long time ago, but the impact of that trauma has, you know, they've lost the family, they've lost the ability to be, the previous generation to be caring and compassionate parents, you know, and I think, you know, going forward, there'll still be lots of issues in regards to that, but I think there's far more healthier people.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, to your point earlier, like it's good that people have time to, well, maybe not taking a bunch of time off work to, you know, find themselves, kind of thing like that too. But for society in general to kind of understand better that it's like, well, we need to not just work through shit, or just, you know, again, pull up your bootstraps and keep working. Like, you can deal with your own shit at home, sort of thing. It's like, well, I think about shit all the time. My mind doesn't just shut off, and especially where most of us are doing kind of boring, repetitive work. All you do is think about the shit that you've gone through, sort of thing. And if it's something that's large, that's plaguing your mind, it's like, no, I should take a day off so I can sit and think about this kind of stuff and see where I'm actually at, how much of this is affecting my day-to-day action, sort of thing like that. So for people that need it, it's important, but it's like, we all kind of need that to a degree, because we've all experienced some sort of trauma or suffering. But there's also going too far and letting too much of that stuff happen, where it's like, okay, you need to get shit done though. Yeah. Like,
and you have to admire the immigrants though, because of that. Because I would think that their stories are a lot more hardship driven than mine. Yeah. You know?
Well, that's why they say that the children of immigrants usually do the best out of any developed country's society, because they have the ethics of hard work and understanding the value of a dollar, but they're still young enough to be integrated into the current society that they're in, and they can see opportunity far better than
take advantage of it.
I think I've had that conversation with lots of people, like, well, rich kids, you know, when they do well, nobody really gives a shit. It's like, well, you have everything given to you, you should do well, you know, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, when they have an addiction problem or they crash a car, it's like, yeah, fuck that guy. At the same time too, right? Yeah. Rich prick kind of stuff, but it's like, then all of a sudden, you know, you do well and you take care of your kids, and then do they become assholes because you did well? Do you instill, is it capable, or is everybody capable of instilling good values into kids, even though they have the opportunity to have more than the parents did? Or?
Well, that raises a whole interesting point in regards to values. Yeah. Are the values being imposed on the children, are the parents' values, or is it the computer's values, or television's values, or whatever? You know, are they learning their values from a sitcom?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that it's an interesting one, because I kind of think of the Perversos in that sense. Because they did well, and I didn't know it, but apparently Uncle Peter was kind of an asshole when he was younger. Not even kind of, apparently. But I never saw that. I always thought of him as like a really soft, kind, soft-spoken, gentle person. Always treated us really well. Like, we'd go and cut grass for them, and they'd have more than enough food for us. Like, they would clean out the fridge, basically, to feed us. And they'd give us $20, which, you know, when you're 14, that's more money you know what to do with, sort of thing, almost. You know, and they were just really happy to have that. And then you kind of see their kids, which are your generation, I guess, they have, you know, some resentments and their own issues with certain things, and then their kids, which are my age, it's like, well, does like some of that stuff kind of just get passed down? Like, because both of the Mraz boys don't have kids either.
No.
Is it because like they're afraid to not have kids? Because I don't really want kids, you know, and it's partly because I'm afraid of doing a bad job, even though I was raised well. It's like, can I live up to that standard of what my parents did, or is there already enough people in society, or do I need to just add that much more weight onto my life, sort of thing like that? You know, some of it's me just again getting stuck in my head too much and focusing on things maybe I don't need to, but at the same time, like, if I don't think about it, then what happens? Right?
Well,
or do I just try to jump into a family and, you know, create another series of traumas for another generation?
Because we're intelligent human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all generational. It is, you know.
Yeah.
What's it? There's a saying. I don't know if I'm going to get this correct. Is it if you don't provide shelter and housing and everything to a child, that child in the future may choose to burn your house down. You know. So yeah, there is a village that. I mean, everything has changed, you know, when you look at us, how our parents were educated, how we were educated, and now how you were educated, it's all completely different.
Yeah.
You went to school, were you ever threatened with the strap?
No, that was, I think the first 3 years they were still allowed it, and then I think when I was in grade 4 they took it away. Because it was become too violent, or that's not your job, sort of thing like that. It's like, yes and no, because I'm the legal guardian for 6 hours a day, and some kids need a smack, you know. But the thing is too, from my understanding, there is leaps and bounds difference between abuse and discipline. But again, because my parents were decent, you know, they didn't beat the shit out of us. They one smack, and you know, and by the time you're 7 years old, just having your own name yelled at you. Connor! Ooh.
And you look at, you know, the multi-diagnosis of children in one particular classroom, and what the teachers have. You know, this kid has attention deficit disorder, this kid has oppositional defiant disorder, this kid has, you know, like, I don't recall that growing up. In my classroom, we did have a low-functioning girl that was in, I think, 2 and 3, but she was low. That's low-functioning, you know.
Yeah, which was she would have had a hard time regardless. But,
yeah.
Well, South Park actually did a video or part of one of their episodes like long time ago about the cure for ADD or ADHD, sort of thing like that. And kids are sitting in front of their books or whatever, and they start playing around, and guy comes up and starts yelling at them. Put your toys down. Read your book. Pay attention. That guy starts screaming. The kids are just like sitting there reading the book. Like, see, it works every time. So some of it, again, I think with the whole, well, we need to give time for people to, you know, work through things and think through stuff. But some of it's like you can overthink stuff and dwell on shit for too long too.
Yes.
You know, so and the same thing is that if you're giving too much leash, you're gonna run wild with it, sort of thing too, right? But again, everybody's different, so how much leash is the correct amount before you have to rein somebody in and say, no, you need to come back and be a part of reality again. You can't just live in the clouds all the time.
Yeah.
So
I remember growing up in a classroom. It was a good time. I always felt safe, secure, in a classroom. Yeah. Do the kids feel that way now? When they're sitting next to little Johnny, who may just freak out and decide to pound you or whatever, you know, because
I don't know.
He has to go to the quiet room and scream his little lungs out. We never had any of that, you know.
Well, that you remember anyway.
Well, we had kids that were tougher than others, and you know, talked back to teachers, and they were escorted out quite quickly. And thrown in the principal's chair office, you know. I
think part of that though is because you're this much older now too, is that your perception of what the world is so much larger. As your world is very small when you're 7 years old.
Very small.
Is the other thing, like you're concerned about who you're going to play with at recess, what you're going to have at lunchtime, you know, was like, what are we having for dinner? Like, am I gonna be able to go ride my bike after? Sort of stuff. We're weighed down by so much more. Like, even just going and doing things, and you feel anxious about stuff, and I'm not sure about this. Like, no, I remember these feelings being good. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I found that with myself is that if I'm starting to feel anxious about things or not sure, just like smile, like put a physical smile on your face. Like, no, this is excitement. This isn't worry. Like, it's just, but you get in your head too much about things, and like you start thinking about consequences and whatever. You don't think about consequences as your kid. You're just like, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be awesome.
I don't think I'll break my leg, but let's go.
Yeah, well, it's not even in your realm of thinking, right?
No.
It's so I think that's the other part of it, is that more often than not, kids are worried about going to school because it's boring. You know, they don't give the weight. It's like, well, I got to hang with my friends all day. You know, I got to go play at recess or outside or whatever sort of thing. I got to do all these other things where I really appreciate that stuff, because otherwise I was on the farm and shoveling shit half the time, sort of thing, right? So,
okay.
So it's like I enjoy going to school all the time, but there's a lot of town kids that hated it. There's a lot of kids in industrialized countries that don't like going to school. But then you see kids that are, you know, happy as hell. It's like, well, I got a bicycle, like this African kid or whatever. It's like, I got a bicycle, so it only takes me an hour to get to school now, and I have that much more time for learning. I can read that many more books, and it's like, well, again, it's a matter of perspective, right? So,
you know, one of the theories was in regards to children is and the law, you know, future generations being more and more lost. When our grandparents were little, they all had responsibilities.
Yep.
They all had a job.
Yeah.
Whether that job was weeding the gardens, you know,
Getting eggs.
You know.
Yeah, if you can stand up and walk, you can figure out how to do stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're gonna be put to work.
Yeah.
So they all had responsibilities and duties.
Yeah.
And
well, and some of that's good because it definitely instills the purpose of what life's about, and shit shouldn't just be handed to you all the time.
yeah,
With that said, life is easier, and should we have to, you know, slave away on shit constantly? No, but it's like, again, where's the what part of the spectrum do we fall on? How much of this is good and how much of this is, you know, virgin not child abuse kind of shit too,
well,
right?
there's that too. But then when you look at your plate of food, are you thinking that someone struggled to make this plate of food, or are you just gonna snark it down?
Yeah. And half the time, like, asking a kid to make their bed is shitty, but it's like you're trying to instill something that I shouldn't have to go into your room and tell you how to do this. And I was watching a military guy talk about it, and it was kind of leading into what Jordan Peterson had also talked about, that make your bed first thing in the morning, so that every day you start, you've already accomplished something before you even leave your room. And it doesn't seem like much, and I rarely make my bed, but it's like, that is actually a good point. Because then you're instilling, you know, some level of routine for one, but then it's like, well, doesn't a made bed look nicer than a messy bed? You know, it's just these little things that you can add on to your day that are virtually not any kind of time. Like, how long does it take to straighten out a blanket? Like, no time at all, really. And it's just these little things that you can add to your life, and it's like, well, if I put more things in a row and everything's more routine and a little bit easier, sort of thing like that, great. And then the times where I want to be spontaneous or I just don't feel like doing certain things, okay. But be aware that this is the exception. You need to live your life in some level of order.
Yes, and there's 20 to 25% of that population that can't even deal with making that bed.
Yeah.
Making that bed and that thought process creates so much anxiety that, you know, perhaps they'll just stay in that bed, you know, or do nothing. So. Yeah,
and and again, that's something that, if it's that level of anxiety, which apparently, something like 25 to 30% of people are like clinically anxious, and they can be prescribed shit or, but I mean, how often do we think that, well, this isn't that big of an issue? You know, maybe is that 30% an accurate number even? Like, how many people actually go to seek help for that sort of thing?
I don't know.
Right, so.
But they could track it through people's prescriptions, couldn't they?
Yeah, but I mean, same thing though too. It's just those are the people that are willing to seek help or, you know, hampered by their own mental or emotional state sort of thing, so they actually do something about it eventually.
Yeah.
As where how many people just struggle through life and they don't tell anybody or talk to anybody about it, and that sort of thing too. But again, like, how much of that is people just, you know, being candy asses, and how many people are actually clinical, need some sort of intervention or some level of help sort of thing too, right? So it, again, it's very subjective sort of.
It is.
And there's no single right answer, but
No.
I mean, yeah, and I think having that space though, that being available to have more and more opportunity is good, because as long as these things don't turn into larger issues where the police have to deal with something again that they shouldn't have to. Like, how often are people or cops dispatched to situations where it's like, I don't have training for this at all, but you know, now I have to be a psychologist as well as some level of authority, plus I have to be some sort of childcare person, plus I have to be a medic because like somebody's bleeding out here right now, so I gotta, like, there's so much that's on their plate, and then everybody hates cops at the same time.
I know.
So
Who are the first ones they're going to call though when they're in trouble?
Exactly.
Always. But there is that give and take. You know, I think that for, you know, mental health situations, they should always go out with a mental health therapist. I think the police should hire a mental health therapist.
Yeah.
One should be attached to every shift, every platoon.
Yeah.
That just makes more sense. You know, of course, you know, a lot of times the police will go out with mobile crisis. That being said, you know, you're not going to diffuse a situation when it's already a crisis. You know?
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's kind of what I was actually, one of the points I was gonna talk to you about is the idea that because you're a social worker, you show up on days that are, you know, things are good or happening. Like, shouldn't there be like your type of person on like a whole fleet of people that are, once a domestic dispute is called, like, your type of social worker goes out with the police. You know, they sit back, but you're the one that actually goes in there and it's like, okay guys, what's going on? Like, maybe you have to wear a stab-proof vest or something like that, but it's like, we need to talk. I mean, the cops are here, but they're backup. They're not actually here to fix anything. You know, I have this psychological training sort of thing like that to not only diffuse this, but it's like, this is my third time here this week. You know,
something's going on.
Right, so that's as opposed to you're showing up, you know, all the bureaucracy is stepped through sort of thing like that, and everybody shows up and the house is quickly made clean and stuff like that. See, oh no, everything's good and fine here. Everything's right? Everything's good, right? Yeah, everything's good. Well, what are you solving at that point? Nobody's willing to talk about shit.
No.
Right. So.
No, because they gotta hide their shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are so many extremes when it comes to police intervention and government intervention and stuff like that. First and foremost, there's not enough, I don't believe there's not enough well-trained police officers. Perhaps they could just be police officers that have, a lot of the police officers that are being trained now have social work degrees too.
Nice.
So, you know, I've had a couple of them doing their practicum placements with, and I think that's a wonderful, you know. But it's such a long process to get even into the police department. So you got to, it's no longer you get out of high school and, you know, become a police officer.
Which is good though.
Yeah, and that's the same with firefighters and paramedics and all that kind of stuff, you know. But when you, do they have enough education to recognize their own
biases and issues?
And that's where you had to be very careful when I was writing a report as to how I used my words, because it was putting my spin on things. Because, and actually you probably read a report of mine and it'd be dry as hell, but
try to be as objective as possible.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's impossible with that type of situation. Because, well, like you said, because you have empathy.
Yeah.
You're trying to do what's right, but it's like, I'm not a robot.
No. But technically, they want you to be one too, you know.
Yeah.
And do they do enough training and education for traumatic events? You know, like the paramedics, the firefighters, the first responders see a lot of stuff that we as Joe public don't see. You know.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And then, you know, maybe the next day I may have seen it because of, you know, social work has to become involved and stuff like that. But you know, the first responders, you know, perhaps they need to be, I've always thought they have to be recycled, you know.
Yeah.
Take a year off, you know.
Yeah, well, not only that, I mean, for the level of importance of what the authority figures are, like especially people like police officers, that's a hell of a job. And like you say, like you can't be a 19-year-old cop. You shouldn't be, at least, anyways. Like you, for one, your brain isn't finished being developed. But for two, it's like if it's this big of a job with this many intricacies and moving parts in it, shouldn't it be a university level degree with at least 4 years of education to be a cop?
That's what's happening, yeah.
Because it's there's so much that's going on. And like you said, I mean, you have your own biases. Like you actually have to go see a psychologist to be a part of it. It would make sense, sort of thing like that. And then those psychologists have to be aware of what's going on, sort of thing too, because they're helping train cops. You know, and then because they see more often than not, they see the worst parts of society.
Someone's having the worst day of their life.
Yeah. And they got to deal with it every day.
Yeah.
And then they still got to be able to go home and, you know, be loving and respectful to their families and stuff like that. That it's a hell of a weight to put on
They
people.
drink. I'd like to interject one thing if I
Sure.
may. I feel a crime problem in the early part of this century. Just it was out of control, and they're arresting everybody, and there's police violence against the public, and public violence against the police. And they'd had enough. The city council had enough, so they laid off all the cops. And then they rehired them, but they screened them. They hired professional screeners, psychologists, or whoever, to screen out the bullies and the people who overreact right away.
Yeah.
And then they trained the ones that they accepted with crisis management, I call crisis management, how to de-escalate a situation. And then they got them out of their cars and said, go walk the beat. First thing we wanted you to do, what they wanted them to do, was to go to every house in the neighborhood that they were assigned to, knock on the door and introduce themselves and ask them, how can we help?
Nice.
Yeah, and so they got all this feedback saying, this is what's wrong with the neighborhood, you know, or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. But they just dealt with it differently. And then when there was a crisis, they had de-escalation training, so the amount of arrests went down, the amount of intervention stayed the same, but the amount of arrests went down, and the amount of violence police perpetrated or public perpetrated against each other dropped. So it's not completely crime-free by any means.
No.
And I'm not suggesting that what they created, who they hired were all social workers, but they screened them for different issues and stuff, and they turned their city around. It went from what was described as kind of a rat hole, just crisis all the time, to a more or less stable kind of place where there was where people felt safe in their neighborhoods and.
Well, they respected police as people, not as
They knew
some
who they were.
jackroot thug kind of thing.
Yeah,
either,
I
right?
thought
So
the great idea, knock on the door and introduce yourself.
that's huge.
Get out of the car.
Know that person's name.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's just one example of what you guys are talking about, what is needed, and I agree. They need social workers, they need the psychologists, they need the training to de-escalate things rather than just go in there and say, okay, you're done. Shoot him, taser him, arrest him.
Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, there's definitely going to be a need for SWAT team, tag team type people, sort of thing like that. But that's rare, and those are very specialized, trained people in a very different area, sort of thing like that too. But yeah, to say that you can do a year of training to be a cop, it seems a little thin.
Yeah. And I know basic training is a lot more difficult now, and it certainly takes a lot longer. And your application will be considered, you know, if you have a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also know there's a difference between like city cops compared to the RCMP.
Yeah.
Because the RCMP are, well, from what I've heard, they're comparable to like the American military level training, which awesome for our cops, kind of sad for the American military to a degree. But I mean, that's the other thing too. That's kind of more of like the next step up for the police part is part of it. But at the same time, though, too, shouldn't there be a decent level of like you said, like of understanding of the person, but the people that they're serving and protecting, to know them as people as well. You know, like because I mean, everybody hates cops until you need one.
That's right. Oh yeah. And it's was it any different than when I got pulled over for speeding? Your first response is, yeah, I did something wrong. I'm not going to take it out on the RCMP officer because, so be polite. you know, treat that person if that person has a name too, you know?
Yeah.
And they'll be exactly the same way to you.
And that's what happened with your speeding ticket.
Yeah, that's right. I still got it.
He's a good guy though, but
Turn on the tears.
I
That shit
knew
doesn't
that.
work.
I knew that, you know, so, yeah, so, but, you know, will they invest that kind of money? I think they, you know, they want to invest money in toys.
Yeah.
So they want to have another airplane. They want to have, you know, the other day the SWAT team was actually at the end of our block.
Yeah.
And we
It seems
still
like a
haven't.
Pretty quiet neighborhood.
It
Otherwise,
is, and we still haven't found out why.
Yeah, well, they may not put it on the news because of the situation that was happening either. So.
But their vehicles were on the front of this person's lawn,
Yeah.
and you know it was.
like the tank, eh?
Yeah.
Right to the door.
Oh
So-
yeah. Well, this might be one of those things too, where it's a quick drug bust takedown sort of thing like that, and purposely doesn't go on the news, or maybe they
usually
found
brag
a.
about that though, right?
No, they,
Well-
all news releases or actions that the police officers go on to their news releases.
Yeah. Well, the drug stuff because they're showing that they're taking care of the community, but what a lot of the time they don't tell people is that, well, like I was hanging out with a friend that was going to be a lawyer, and she was saying that at any given point in Alberta, at least anyways, there's a minimum 2 serial killers out there.
In
And
Edmonton,
in Alberta.
in Alberta.
But it's
okay.
like they don't tell anybody about it, or even when they take these people out or get them arrested or anything like that, because it's just there's a certain level of public fear
Mm-hmm.
that they don't want to instill in people. They just want everybody to assume everything's good and okay, that somebody down the street could be a serial killer. You know, because I mean, well, what could happen during the summer of Sound sort of thing too, like that turned an entire city, well, the entire country of America plus parts of Canada into mayhem, because it's like, well, if you have blonde hair, you might be a victim at any given point, sort of thing like that. You know, and then feeding into the propaganda, into the news cycles. It's like, well, this is causing mass hysteria. I mean, it'll be good maybe if we can, you know, pull this guy out of the crowd somewhere, but he ended up getting caught in a speeding ticket anyways,
Yeah.
or
There's a
something like
parking
that,
ticket.
or parking ticket,
Parking ticket.
right? So
He got
It was a mistake.
yeah.
I mean,
Huh, what's that?
we admit the mistake. This one down
Oh,
here.
yeah,
Okay.
that could be part of it too, right?
It's wrong house. Oops, sorry.
Yeah,
But you know, him getting picked up on a parking ticket, that's good police work.
yeah.
That's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody did their research and stuff,
Yeah.
and it worked out well. But it's like, okay, well, maybe making this mass hysteria wasn't good for the general public, because now we're all not just in fear, but it's like somebody that's, you know, going to pick up a blonde girl, sort of thing like that. He's a creep all of a sudden, you know, and it starts dividing people. And again, a series of artificial lines is where some things, you know, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
So-
because there's some very scary people in the world.
Yeah,
And I don't necessarily mean all the politicians. There's
Yeah.
just some very scary people in the world.
Yeah.
Whether they was beaten into them, or they have an evil gene, if there's such a thing. You know, I
no,
don't
but
know.
there's definitely people that are psychopaths or sociopaths that have, well, even,
No, they run the countries. Come on.
well, yeah,
Corporations.
yeah, some of them do for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But they even talk about how some people have like shrunken amygdalas, so your fear response is actually bad. Well, good enough for the analogy, anyways. But yeah, it's shrunken, so they don't feel fear or panic or anything like everybody else does. So because I remember watching a video of a serial killer in the States, and he'd been pulled over more than once when he had a body in the back of his vehicle, but he just stayed calm, and he talked to the cop about, you know, your taillights out, sort of thing. Oh yeah, I'll get that fixed up, no problem. And he had no reason to search his vehicle. You know, and he was the kind of guy that was strangling hookers to death with his bare hands. So it's like, okay, so to do that act for one is horrific,
Yeah.
and it'd be hard to do, like, for one thing. Well, for those of us that have some level of empathy. But then, yeah, just to be cool and calm like a cucumber sort of thing like that, to talk to a cop. I mean, shit, yeah, like you said, I mean, getting pulled over for a speeding ticket, it's like, kind of thing, like that, never mind.
I'm acknowledging I did
Yeah.
something wrong.
Yeah, never mind, you have a fresh corpse in the back of your vehicle.
Absolutely.
Like, that takes another level of, well, a lack of humanity, I guess.
Lack of, yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
and there's lots of those people around, but again, they're usually pretty, more often than not when they get prosecuted, it's like they're pretty charismatic people. They know how to talk. They know how to pull emotions out of other people, because it's like, well, I don't feel these things, but I see how other people react. And they can calculate those things far easier than a lot of us, because we get emotionally invested.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they can spot a victim.
Yeah.
Yeah. They know how to groom people. Yeah, they have it. It's a talent. Yeah.
Yeah, to a degree it is. And,
Yeah.
and that's the weird thing, because it's like, well, again, today's society is good, but I mean, a couple hundred years ago, give that same guy an axe.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to battle. It's like, oh yeah, we are. Right, so the world changes, but it's like...
Oh, why didn't we hear about that? You know, well, of course there's historical documents of people, you know, like, that were crazy, right?
Yeah, well, the berserkers, I mean, that was like an honored position in the battlefield for a lot of people. These guys are big, crazy, hulking monsters that will kill and kill and kill. You know, and they throw women at him. They throw parties just for his honor, sort of thing like that. Kind of thing, too. Can't do that shit anymore.
But it still goes on in the world, though.
It does.
I was talking to your Aunt Patricia there, and, you know, she was telling me that went on in Kuwait and Afghanistan and stuff like that. And wow.
Yeah, it's amazing for us to think that we're civilized.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because it's a thin veneer that hasn't cracked yet, but it doesn't take much for it to crack. And that's really all it is. Well, we even, like we were talking before about food security. Yeah, like 3 days away from chaos at any given point, because supply chains start to shorten up. It's like, well, I don't want to go hungry.
No.
You know, I don't want to have these things, and that's what I thought was funny when people are talking like, oh yeah, defund the police, and some people immediately thought it's like, get rid of the police altogether. Well, you don't see the problems with that, because there'll be roving gangs of militias that will become a version of police, and they'll be far more violent than anybody that you think is out there now.
I know. When they were talking about changing the gun laws with that last school shooting and stuff like that, apparently in Canada, in Saskatoon even, just the talk of that sold out all the weapons. People went and bought guns.
Yep.
In Saskatoon.
Sounds right. Yeah, fear's a great ally if you know how to wield it the right way. So.
Yeah. But would they use it, you know?
Well, always the funny thing is too, like, whether it's the States or Canada, it's like, well, we need this for protection. You know, or the idea is, you know, like, put it against an oppressive government or this, that, the other things. Okay, but when in the last 100 years, let's say, has anybody pointed the gun at the government and not just at each other? Like, who are you trying to fool here? And that's kind of the part of it. But I mean, at the same time, free market capitalism, you should be able to make guns. You should be able to sell them. And again, most people are fine, but there are a handful of psychos that are out there, or, you know, well, and even psychos, like, some people are just beaten down their whole life, and this is the fine, like, now I have power. Yeah. You know, and it sucks. Yeah, they go into elementary school. Yeah. But it's like, well, how do we stop this?
Because they just want little victims.
Yeah.
People that they want to have power over. You know?
Yeah, and what is the right answer to that? Like, you can't take away people's guns because they simply won't give them up. But allowing them to have them is also the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So
we just have to screen better, I think, really. And I mean, that same goes for, you know, anybody that's in the field of any type of humanity. We have to screen better. Yeah. You know, we have to definitely. There's a lot of people that, you know, I mean, just look what happened in the States the other day with that individual.
Black man got shot 60 times by the cops.
60?
60 bullets.
60.
That hit him. Yeah.
That hit him? Okay, yeah. That's even worse.
Yeah. They justified it because they gave him first aid afterwards.
I'm just going to put this one Band-Aid here.
That's exactly.
There we go. That's my due diligence.
Yeah. I thought I saw a gun.
Yeah, that was what they said.
Yeah. 60.
I mean, they won, I guess? That was the point, right there. Who wins that bout?
I don't know what the point was. It was heightened anxiety and fear and
kind of a
mass mentality of murder.
Well, and kind of a snapshot of where the society's mentality is in general right now too. Like, is overkill enough?
Apparently not anymore. That's frightening. Very frightening, you know?
Yeah, that's a tough place to be because, one, as much as we try to say it's like, well, that was in the States, it doesn't happen here. It's like, we're exactly like the States. We have a few differences, but almost in every way, like, we're exactly like them.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous to think that we're really separate, and we're their largest trading partners. They need our resources.
Yeah.
We take all kinds of their money.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a great deal for both of us.
Yeah. And our country is run by a bunch of elitists.
Yeah, same thing. But again,
Yeah.
to the point where it's follow the money,
Yeah.
right? Is it bad that this thing happened? Well, of course it is. Did somebody get a bunch of clicks and be able to tell a good story sort of thing? How many people made money off this guy getting shot way too many times? I bet you somebody else got rich off it again, out of this horrible thing.
Yes.
Every time they do.
But does that make me complacent?
It's kind of starting to, because it's like, well, this happens so often, it's like, does it even matter anymore? Well, until, you're the one that has your kid
Shot.
But because, like, your son works in the school.
Yeah.
Was that shit going to start spilling to Canada and his school gets shot up now? All of a sudden it hits home a lot differently, right? So, because it's hitting home.
I know, and the drills that he had to do with his kids after this school shooting, and how he had to teach them to change their way of thinking.
Yeah.
Because little boys are like, no, you can't outrun a bullet.
Yeah.
And he did such a good job that he was just practicing. Not the rest of the school, but when the teacher was looking, the principal was looking for him, the lights were all dark, there wasn't a beep in his room.
Yeah.
But why do we have to teach our children that? Oh, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where, I mean, it'd be kind of fun to be the teacher, but it's like pull out a paintball gun and it's like, okay, we're gonna have more of a live fire drill. Does anybody want to see if they can outrun me or my gun? This isn't even a real gun, sort of thing. Like, there is no winning. There is no such thing as a good guy with a gun. There's no, like, it's a very fast-paced, hyper-emotional state, and a lot of mistakes get made everywhere because it's a bad place to be. I mean, more often than not, 99% of your life is going to be comfortable. It's going to be easy. And more often than not, it's not just the fight or flight, it's also the freeze response.
Yes.
Can you do anything when you're faced with that level of adversity? Most people can't. Most of us freeze.
Yep.
I do.
Freeze. Yeah.
I've been doing martial arts for years, and it's like, I still watch things that happen like that in front of me like it's a movie. This can't really be happening.
Yeah, this is I don't know.
But again, are we also right now helping build fear because of that level of thinking? It's like, I'm starting to feel anxious.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And it also makes me feel that I'm being complacent too, because I'm not doing enough.
Oh, complicit, you mean?
Yeah, complicit, pardon.
Yeah, complicit is. But again, what's the right answer? What do? Do we march in the streets? Do we try to back the government that we already don't trust into, taking people's guns away or enforcing better laws or better regulations or better screening?
I don't think it's going in that direction though.
Yeah, because education is almost always better to reduce violence in the first place.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you look at taking a step backwards in America's policies and procedures, Roe versus Wade, and you think that it was, like you say, 1970s, and you look back into the late 50s, or all that pre-war stuff, and the women just giving 12 children, giving birth to and stuff like that, and no choices, and now it's the same thing. So are we going backwards in regards to how we view, we've always been just on the cusp as human beings.
Yeah.
Kind, caring human beings, but now we've got to take some rights away from women, and the poor we won't have to listen to them too, because they shouldn't have a say, because they don't contribute shit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, and yeah, that's one that we're definitely a part of, but at the same time, it's like, well, the abortion laws in Canada are pretty wide open. You can kind of do whatever you want. But it's like, does that not still affect us that this shit's going on in the States? Because we kind of have to hear about it. We have to deal with it. Very likely we're going to have people coming to Canada to get an abortion, especially if they live in the northern states.
Yes, and if they're rich enough too.
Well, and that's just the other thing too. It's like, well, what's cheaper, raising a child or getting the abortion that you want? Sort of thing too. It's like, and yeah, is it ever right? Is it ever wrong? Like for me, I'm pro-choice. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the woman. It's her body. That's
my uterus, my rights, so.
George Carlin makes a good statement about it's like the Republicans or conservatives in Canada sort of thing, they love fetuses. Like 0 to 9 months, they absolutely love you. Like anytime beyond that, they don't give a shit. No services, no nothing. Absolutely love fetuses, and it's a funny thing too because listening to maybe it was *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari talk about that every time a Republican type of government is instated, the infant mortality goes up because they take more money out of healthcare and education, and it goes more and more to business or thing like that. So it's like you could say Republicans like dead babies, but they're still pro-life. So it's like even on that, it's like, well, what do you guys do?
They like dead babies, and they want to take women's rights away.
Yeah.
They want to make another class of subservient people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also with that said too, it's like, show me how does that go? Show me an old liberal, and I'll show you a person without a brain. Show me a young Republican, and I'll show you somebody without a soul.
Okay.
So it's like, but we're painting a very wide stroke on a lot of things too, because there's lots of black people that like Trump, and it doesn't seem like that should make sense.
Well, I dispute lots.
There's some. There's enough for it to not be nothing, though, right?
Yeah, it's not nothing, but it's not what we call significant.
Yeah.
I just checked my emails, and I flipped over to CBC just to see what was going on. July 4th in the States.
Yeah.
A Chicago parade, 6 dead, 24 wounded, a guy shooting from the rooftop.
There's a party.
Yeah, just want to say, you guys had that discussion about what do you do with guns.
Yeah.
It's happening.
You celebrate it, I guess, eh?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, sweet Jesus, eh?
Yeah, well, that's the part of it too, is like how many people have to die before they realize it's a bad idea. I mean, doesn't the States have more gun deaths every year than any warring country in any other part of the world?
Yeah. Usually a couple children dead a day.
Yeah, like how often do you have to throw stats and numbers around before it actually sinks in? It's like, or again, does it just turn to a numbing sensation of just like, I
know it's the gun companies that need the money, and of course, they're making money in Ukraine too. We're shipping ammunition and lots of ammunition.
Yeah. And again, to the point where people try to have, unfortunately, people like you that actually have empathy and stuff like that. But it's like all these bleeding hearts and all life is important sort of things. Like, no, money's important. And if you don't believe that, look at any big business in the world. They will happily walk over any tribe, society, way of life, religion, whatever, just to make an extra few bucks. They all do it. Oh, but it's a corporate entity. That's the business that does that. Yeah, because it's not run by people.
Yes, really. That's right. And I feel bad for supporting Amazon, but Amazon makes my life easier. I'm sorry.
You're part of the problem.
I know. I am.
We used to be able to source things locally. We used to have local hardwares, people lived in our neighborhood, stuff like that. That was killed by
Walmart.
And Staples got rid of all the small businesses that dealt with lawyers. All that stuff.
Well, even places like those Canadian-owned companies like Zellers and stuff. You start throwing enough money at them, they sold out. There's no Zellers around. Tim Hortons, the pride of Canada. It's an American company now.
It's American.
It's owned by the same company that owns Wendy's.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing how many people don't know that. Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Has been for
Do
years.
the slightest bit of research, you can find it.
And you know, times are tough when Walmart is complaining about Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel for them.
I'm sorry.
But well, that's the funny thing. Even now, I'm pretty sure Walmart has more economic power than the bottom 90 countries in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Like they have way more say what goes on than a lot of these places. People, granted, a lot of those lower countries are, a dictatorship that the people aren't really treated like people, anyways. And to the point, I mean, keep their people hungry and ignorant, sort of thing. It's like, well, they're not going to be good at rebelling anyways, so they kind of don't matter.
Yeah.
I've got my money.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's, and again, like, how far does your empathy draw? Like, can we fix the whole world? Is it possible even to think that direction? Because that's definitely a young person's way of looking at stuff.
Well, it is, and I try to be thoughtful in regards to my buying capacity.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when I will go to Walmart, but I don't shop there.
Yeah, I try to stay away from certain places, and I like to support Canadian or directly on local businesses as much as I can too. But I mean, I don't have an Amazon account, and I live close enough to a lot of stores. Like, well, I'm 40 years old. I don't need to skip the dishes. Getting a pizza delivered, which everybody's done since forever. Once in a while, that happens. Even like I hardly even do that. It just, there's just so much that, again, convenience is killing us.
Yeah. And does that convenience make us lazy?
Yeah.
Are we lazy?
Yeah.
Lazy beggars. We don't want to cook our food. We don't want to see where our food comes from.
Yeah. We don't want to get rid of our garbage. That just disappears magically once it's in the bin. And,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because none of us really understand, well, the value of work or struggle again. And that's, again, it's important to have some level of struggle. Like we all need to work somewhat harder at being less comfortable.
Well, if we don't do that, well, then someone's going to do that for us, and we're just going to have a war.
Yeah. But
because that's how it restarts the whole thing all over again,
Yeah. Well, and somewhat to your point there earlier, again, with the whole, are some people need time to deal with things, or some people just being flakes, kind of sort of thing like that. And yeah, it's part of it is that again we have the opportunity to have more time to think and be able to do stuff, but we also need to have some level of getting our shit together. We need to get more things going, and it's like, well, are these people just saying that like, how poor me, and like, why don't I have this sort of stuff? Like, are you just focusing on the Kardashians or all these things that you don't have? Or are you going to listen to the participation commercial that was made like 25 years ago? Like, none of us are good at everything, but all of us are good at something. Yeah. Some of us will never be able to do certain things. I'm never going to be able to play basketball professionally. I know that. I've accepted that a long time ago.
Okay, I'm glad. Yeah.
Right? No problem. But I can do other things. So I've gotten good at those things over the years. I'm proud of that. Would I like to be possibly more famous or do more stage acting and stuff like that? Sure. Have I done anything about it though? No, not really.
No.
Is me pissing and moaning about it going to help? No.
And there would be lots of opportunity for that in Calgary.
Yeah, and I did it for a while, and then it's like, well, I'll try to build more of my career, around other things, so I'm not just like a single thing. Like the more you have in your background, and the better you are, sort of thing like that. But it's like, that's my fault. That's not anybody else's. It's like, it'd be great to be as famous as Hugh Jackman, but at the same time, would it? Because being famous doesn't necessarily equate happiness either. Yeah. Especially when paparazzi are following you all around all the time. Or the Bobberazzi.
True, and and where our technology is taking us too. And you think of, us having these inner battles, and there's this outside stuff happening to us. But you think of all the stuff that we don't know about, and what the drones are doing, and that's kind of scary too. That a drone could come in and just do a single bomb, and you're not even aware that there's a fly beside you.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. There's a really huge uptick on what technology is capable of. And yeah, by the time something gets released and sold to the general public, it's like, well, there's generations or orders of magnitude better stuff that's still being researched and worked on. And
it has been for a long time.
Well, and Boston Dynamics, the robots and like semi-autonomous 4-legged or 2-legged creatures that they can make, it's like, yeah, they can't talk to people because that takes like as much processing to be able to have like something intelligent at the same time. But yeah, you could have a very easily mechanical drone that kind of looks like a person, you know, put some clothes on it and murder somebody and just drive away, sort of thing like that.
There you go. I'm reading a book right now about that. It's called God's Footprint.
Yeah.
They want
That sounds like a good one.
Yeah. And the possibilities are endless. Maybe that's why I get caught up in that. You know, I don't understand why all this evilness is going around because I've read it in a book that we can handle it.
Yeah. Well, part of it is though too, like there's always a need for invention and innovation to make things better and easier to a degree. Because I mean, again, we shouldn't be having to swing axes and stuff like that to heat our houses sort of necessarily. And there's going to be issues. I mean, planes crash still, hundreds of people have died, but at the same time, it's still arguably the safest way to travel, and for huge distances. We're going to stop flying? Of course not. You know, like we're going to find with a lot of the technologies that, well, like things like Elon Musk is doing, there's going to be lots of people that are going to try to exploit that and do terrible things with it too. But in general, is it going to help move society forward? I sure hope so. I would hope that we could eventually, within my lifetime, maybe we could be a more than one planet species.
All I know is Elon will get richer.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's a fact. That's a for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was damn near broke at one point, so he's done a lot of work. But at the same time, I mean, who else with that level of money is actually doing anything for humanity? Or do they? Or
is he? Is he doing something for humanity?
I think trying to move beyond the planet is a good idea, especially like in 2029. There's an asteroid that's going to come fairly close to the planet, and it's possible that if it has the right trajectory, it'll make a full loop, and by 2035 it could actually impact the planet.
Okay.
So if we're not developing more and better space technology, can we help divert that sort of thing? Or do we let it hit the planet and then all of a sudden that's just the end of it, we go back to the Stone Age? Can we have, you know, other planets that we can live on, sort of thing like that, or the moon or something like that, where we don't have to just, you know, fully erase the species every 10,000 years, sort of thing like that, and start over? If I think there's a benefit to being multiplanetary for lots of reasons, and even more so to the fact that the more we do and the further we go, like we can take lessons of how we do things out there and say, oh, well, it's actually better and more efficient to process water this way with certain type of desalinators or whatever, so we can use that on Earth, or, you know, to make better ecosystems or habitats or anything like that on Mars or even on Venus. I mean, there's a ton of free energy waiting to be used on Venus, and the atmosphere is thick enough and buoyant enough if we make the right kind of cities. It'll almost be like the Cloud City in Star Wars, sort of thing like that.
Yeah.
Not exactly like that, but it's that idea, and there's more energy than you know what to do with there, like basically free usable energy. So
sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you know, I don't believe that we're the only planet in the universe that has any type of intelligence. I think there's far more smarter people out there and stuff like that. And there's this joke about, you know, rich people traveling to space, you know, wanting to experience, you know, something they've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And the solution to that is just take them all to the door of the tax office.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
That's true, but I'm all for Elon Musk leaving the planet.
Yeah. Well, the other part of it is too is that he's not thinking about himself. I think he's no, to a degree. I mean, it's more so that, you know, whatever he's starting now, in 500 years, if he doesn't start it now, it's never going to happen. But in 500 years, is it not possible to actually have thousands of people living on the moon? You know, like if
before that date.
Yeah, I don't discount that. You know,
and I think that's more the direction, in my opinion, anyways. That's more what we have to do, because our lifespans are 75, 80 years. Let's start thinking centuries or millennia at a time. We have the technology to. If we start something now, we can actually have something for our great grandchildren that will be far better. And it's like as technology develops and stuff like that, we can even get better and faster at doing these things. So it's like, why wouldn't we start doing those things? And I know China's been on that page for centuries themselves. It's like, we're not going to just do something for the here and now. We're going to do something so that in 100 years or 500 years from now, like, it'll be that much better for us to be able to do things. And we're getting to be hopefully smart enough of a society that, yeah, we're not just thinking about what's going to happen this weekend. Like, let's plan for an actual future sort of thing, so that by 2500, what are we doing? What are we capable of at that point?
But is he really thinking that way?
To a degree, he is. For
Because
sure.
I see him as being quite self-absorbed.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
and a money-making machine himself.
For sure he is, but he's also on the spectrum, and I don't think he thinks like most people is part of it.
True.
I mean, granted, well, and the other thing is too, like, I don't know that I could understand any level of rocket building,
Yeah.
Neuralink, which is basically putting the level of technology of a cell phone into your brain directly, running Tesla, which is, you know, innovating and help cleaning cars, working on the self-driving vehicles, so autonomous vehicles, sort of thing like that. Like, and those are just like the four major ones that he's doing.
Yeah.
But he's not doing it, he hires people to do it. That's the
No,
difference.
but they're his brainchild, and if he didn't have the drive to do it, well, even just the SpaceX thing, like, he
Yeah,
almost
but-
went bankrupt making
Yeah.
rockets work.
But you're a smart guy. You're just missing the billions of dollars that he has.
Well,
so you could hire the people to do it, and then he takes the credit for it. And I'm
Sure.
not saying he shouldn't get credit because he's putting the money up,
Yeah.
but he's not he has the idea, but he's not executing it.
Yeah,
he's
but
not
I
the
mean,
real genius.
for sure, but I mean, for me to build a house by myself is a lot of work.
Mhm.
For somebody to build a rocket ship by themselves is impossible, right? Even if you have a 3D printer and stuff like
Yeah.
that, so you need to have other people in industry and stuff. And again, cooperation is always going to make things better. And I'm not going to say he's a great leader, and I don't think anybody's ever been a great leader. But the other part is too is that he's also affording opportunity to physicists, engineers, you know, people that are willing to do these things, that are saying, it's like, okay, well, I can help make this dream come to fruition, because it's like, I have an idea or understanding of what it is that you're doing. You know, like, I like the idea of, if, you know, maybe not me, maybe not my kids, maybe not even my great-great-grandkids, but in the future, like, this technology will help do better for everybody. And I'm not going to pretend I know anybody's mind.
Yeah.
I barely know my own half the time. but with that said, though, too, like, how many other billionaires in the world are doing anything to help people in general? I mean, there's how many billions of dollars in Richard Branson's pocket, or any of the oil sheiks that live in the Middle East?
Oh yeah.
What do they
Same
do
with
for anything?
Bill Gates. So he has. He's supposed to do some work and he donates some money. I don't know.
Yeah.
Charities.
Well, didn't he give out 200 million polio vaccines to India? Like,
Probably, you know.
like, he's same thing, but again, another billionaire that's like, oh, well, he's doing that wrong. Well, he's doing that wrong. It's like, well, anybody with that level of fame or power or influence can't do anything right.
No, because you're going to be
Right.
critiqued no matter what.
Yeah.
Because
Because everybody has opinions of $1
well, I
billion, right?
suppose-
So
well, no, and there's a certain amount of resentment towards the rich person.
totally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing where I think there's some level of credit that has to be given to some people, because and he's actually willing to talk to the public is the other thing. He's not just hiding behind closed doors all the time. He's a social person for the most part when he has time. But that's the other part too. Like, every time somebody tries to, like, shit on Elon Musk or something like that, it's like, what would you do with $10 billion? Guarantee you'd be wrong.
True, because you can't.
Well, he's got way more than that. It's like, you're missing the point. Okay, you have his money. What do you do with it? Oh, I'd fix world hunger. It's like, okay, what about the trillions of dollars that each government gets every year? Shouldn't they have already fixed it?
Yeah.
Why should one man have to be responsible for all that? Like, that shit bothers me. It's like, oh, we need to fix this planet. It's like, there's almost 8 billion of us. I'm pretty sure we can do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Like,
That's true. Yeah.
like, come on. Like, to say that he's doing anything wrong at all, go fuck your hat. Go make your own $1 billion and then tell me what's right or wrong. Like, that shit bothers me.
But I don't think we should be just looking to an individual that was to save the planet.
No, for sure not. That's exactly the point. Well, on the other side, I mean, the Kardashians are billionaires,
Oh yeah, smart business people.
right? Good at business. What are they actually doing to help humanity in general, though?
Well, Kimmy's trying to get her lawyer's license.
Well, sure. Good for her, I suppose. Like, but I mean, exactly, right? So, in my opinion, I think it's a waste of time giving any time or effort to the Kardashians.
Oh yeah.
But again, value in entertainment. Maybe they've helped a lot of people become a better version of themselves. I don't actually know that, but it's quite possible. You know,
Anything's possible, not everything's probable.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. So there's, well, and again, my opinion of things is just that. It's my opinion. I mean, if I were given some level of control or power, I would be a tyrant. I know I would be. It's like, as much as I think I'd like to be able to do things right, there'd be like, some people have to be made to do things.
Well, I mean, that's true in any given circumstance, isn't it?
Human nature.
That's, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and if you're paying somebody to do something in particular and that person isn't doing it, you can either explain it nicely to them or you can be, therein lies the question in regards to the whole millennium thing here too.
Yeah.
You know, them arguing about, well, they never told me that I'd have to do this or that, the other thing. But you're working for this company.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you, don't you have to follow what they say?
Yeah, have a little bit of drive for yourself, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe figure some stuff out for yourself. But
Mm.
yeah, again, it's the young person's mentality of, you know, the world should be this way, is where you know, and that's why, yeah, like, again, back to the politics side kind of thing. Like, the liberal is typically the group of the youth, the political side of the youth, where we want to make the world a better place for everybody. As where the conservatives are older people and have lived life a lot of the time, and it's like, well, this is the world as it is. So, and we kind of need both sides because it's
Oh yeah.
it's important, but at the
Because there's a
same
big picture.
but at the same time, it's like, why is it always sides? Why is this type of government gonna work?
Because we divide and conquer. We divide and conquer ourselves, you
Yeah.
know. So,
yeah,
That's
there is no
the
right
same-
solution.
yeah, I say that too. You know, when you work for a big government organization, they have 200 and 300 people there, and there's a lot of stuff that's going down, and you know, and stuff like that. But they don't give you. And then the union comes in, you know, and it's supposed to be helping these workers with their rights and stuff like that. But there's so many, you know, managers and stuff like that that they can just change and create new holes in the dike so that people are always running around and no one's solving anything, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and like always too, I mean, yeah, like, there's always going to be people exploiting everything they can. Doesn't matter what rule you make or what you try to do, somebody's going to try to take advantage of it in some way. Not everybody, but I mean, that's also the reason why you have a hard time getting your own money out of the bank. Because there's been a handful of assholes that made it difficult for all of us.
Yes, that's very true.
So, and yeah, so every time we have another law passed or another step of technology, it's like, well, who's going to turn this into a weapon? Or who's going to, you know, ruin people's lives because of this thing that typically and on its face for everybody looks good, but somebody found out how they can take advantage of it.
That's like the 3D printers, you know,
Yeah.
wonderful for architecture and planning and designing, but you can make it done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's, yeah, you can, everything can be twisted and corrupted if it's given enough time.
True.
So,
And so does that make us sick bastards? Humanity?
yeah, kind of.
Kind of.
It does, and that's, I think that's why it's good that the internet is such a cesspool of opinions right now. Because I think once we finally air all of our dirty laundry out, we can finally, like, grow up as a society. You know, it's like, nobody should be criticizing anybody. Nobody's perfect.
No.
All of us have some sort of dirty laundry, or, you know, skeletons in our closet, or whatever analogy you want to use.
Hardships, trauma, stuff, we all have suffered, you know. Yeah. But nor do I want to be under any type of dictatorship either, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a slippery slope, because everything can, again, yeah, be perverted to odd mean ends and stuff like that. But if we don't go forward, I mean,
Well,
if
we're going
that's-
backwards.
Yeah.
I think we are right now.
to a degree, for sure we are. And there's always that cycle that happens, I think, with levels of thinking society. And there's some people, why would we ever do that? It's like, well, that level of thinking would have kept us up in trees and flinging shit at each other. Some of us want to be a little bit more adventurous. That's why we're here now.
That's
Like-
right. I love underwear.
Yeah, right. So, like, some people are adventurous. Some people have to try to break the mold, and
Push the
sometimes
envelope, yeah.
sometimes that's ends up with terrible consequences. But sometimes you need people that stay at home and are happy to raise kids or just work on the computer all day and not make waves at all ever. We need those people too.
Yeah.
Right. So to say that any of it's wrong, I don't think is correct.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and the older you get, it's like, well, what is the right thing? Like, if I had Superman's abilities, if I was younger, it's like, oh yeah, I'd fix all the world's problems. It's like, you can't. It's impossible. And the things that you did when you were younger, you'd scare yourself when you got older. It's like, holy shit, did I really do all that?
Yes, and I do that too, the shit that I did. But when you look at, the values, I suppose we go back to values and how you were raised and stuff like that, and more retrospective or introspective in regards to the older you get. Are we even close to that now? Like I say, I don't feel that, and people may say, I don't think Trudeau did such a bad job during the pandemic. It was during a pandemic. I don't get as to why people are so upset that they can't get this, and this right now. Because we're just getting back on our feet. Such instant gratification that we need all the time. Instant gratification, acknowledgement. We're just landing on our feet. Come on.
Yeah. Well, because it's easy to, that's the point of a politician. Point finger at somebody so that the rest of the government can do business as it's supposed to.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's a wonderful leader or anything like that.
No.
But
he got voted in twice.
It's
maybe not the person that, was wanted, but it's like, maybe it's the one that we deserve.
Well, yeah, people didn't vote for the Conservatives because they're the politics of division. They fight against each other.
Yeah.
Just look at the current leadership race and stuff.
Yeah.
They're hurling invective at each other instead of trying to be the voice of unity that they claim they are. They aren't.
Yeah. Well, and we're kind of getting back to the days of Joe Clark, where we're going to have like a progressive conservative party, the forward backward party, because there's a lot of conservatives that are more forward thinking than liberals sometimes. Well, even during the Freedom Convoy, it's like, well, the word freedom is a calling card for the far right or the alt right. It's like freedom, liberty, these things that are quite literally the left are now associated with the right. Do you see the problem with all this political bullshit? All of this is a fucking sham. Maybe we should all vote for non-confidence and then, put in a government that actually does something. Because that,
you get the government you deserve, as you pointed out.
Right? So that's the thing too. Yeah, it'll be, well, again, history's repeating itself again.
Well, the first time's a tragedy, the second time is a farce, to finish that analogy.
Yeah, there you go, right?
We're in the farce period now.
Yeah. We are. Well, politics right now in Canada, leadership is kind of meh.
Yeah, and I used to look at Stephen Harper as this corrupt prick and, growing government instead of shrinking it and embezzling money, this, that, and the other thing. And then Trudeau shows up and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be there for the people. And he is. He's trying to bring everybody's voices out and get things done. And I'm going to save the planet. And, I'm going to bring 300 of my closest constituents around the world, to stop, emissions happening. What?
They're all going to be family members too.
Yeah, like some of that stuff is like, oh, okay, I got sucked in again, didn't I? I should just stop paying attention to all of it.
He legalized pot.
Yeah.
Right? And I told my students that's the only thing he's going to do. And he did it, and he reneged in all the other provinces, right, ever since.
Yeah.
But then some of the decisions are made based on the fact that his cabinet is all smoking pot before they make a decision.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think so. I don't think. Do you think that's true?
Well,
Or is that a
somewhat.
joke?
I mean,
Well, I think it's a joke with the kernel of truth to it.
Okay.
yeah,
You know, like they're not, as you pointed out, Connor, they're making decisions based on their ideology rather than on reality. And all of them do. Conservatives right now are the same way.
oh yeah,
They're trying to push buttons and stuff. Harper was the one who transformed the progressive conservatives into the Republican Party of Canada.
yeah,
Right? He got rid of the progressives.
Yeah.
Right? So they had nowhere to go.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. They're the traditional conservative values. Yeah,
Aaron O'Toole, coming from the military, he was the latest who said, "No, let's go to the middle," right? And what did the conservatives do? Slap them right in the back.
yeah. Get
Yeah.
out.
So you're going to get Poilievre, who's just a mouth. He's a demagogue. He's like a Trump, but just that and that and that and that. Doesn't have any ideas. He's not a critical thinker. He's just a big mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a platform
No,
other than just
no vision for the
finger
country.
pointing.
Yeah.
You know, and we need a vision for the country. We need, as you guys have talked about this before, we need a broader vision, right? And we don't
Yeah.
have it. I'm not saying Trudeau has it. I think
No.
that's vision's all right, but it's not the ones that we're looking for.
Yeah, when he called that we said that he doesn't want to side with Nazis or whatever to that Jewish politician.
Say what?
Yeah, it was right in the house. There's a clip about it that it's funny as hell actually, but it gets to that point like you're trying to be so progressive and it's like, oh, I'm gonna not draw lines by drawing all these other lines. You know, like
Oh yeah. Well,
you know,
Send me that clip sometime when you get a moment.
yeah,
yeah. Well, it's he's a friend of the First Nations and the rights and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah,
damn, he's not going to give him any clean water.
no. Well, that one I also jumped on the bandwagon with that one. It was 70 bands or tribes or whatever around Canada that don't have clean drinking water. And it's like, yeah, that's bullshit and it shouldn't be happening. It's like, wait a minute. Did the government give them a bunch of money and then they just drank it away instead on booze instead of cleaning their people's water?
I don't know.
And don't get me wrong, painting a pretty racist brush there sort of thing too, but at the same time,
I don't
that shit
know.
happens all the time though
It
too.
does. I mean,
So-
it's one thing that we have done remarkably well is taught him our politics.
Yeah, right. So that's the terrible part about it is like,
And there's
well,
nepotism there too.
Yeah.
So I don't know why don't they?
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. But I
You
mean,
would think they'd have the money to build a water treatment plant.
you would think so. I mean, that was the other part too. Is that again, it's immediately shit turns racist because oh yeah, they're drunks and they're this that or they're pissing their money away or whatever sort of thing. But again, when white people do exactly the same thing, it's like, oh, it's not that big a deal, or our thoughts and prayers are with them, sort of thing. Fuck, we're all racist or prejudiced in some way. Like it's just
Yeah.
again, it's the us and them sort of thing like
Yeah.
that, right? And yeah, everybody should have a right to the basic of clean water. It's 2022. It's figured out. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's all a mess. Like there's again no easy solutions with it because you can't tell us what to do with our people or our money or
Well, they should be able to move forward with that. There should
Yeah.
be some, and we complain about our leadership.
yeah,
I'm sure they have their issues with their leadership. I
Yeah.
know they do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right?
Right?
That's right.
If you're on the top, you don't even give a shit about other people.
No.
I mean, if you do, it's like, well, I can't fix everything. That, yeah,
As long as I get rich.
yeah.
Back to money again, right?
Yeah, that's how it always goes. Like it's just, yeah. So yeah, we solved the world's problems by saying we can't do anything.
That's sad, eh?
Yeah, so that's why when I see people like Elon Musk, that's whether it's right or not, at least he's got a trajectory. Like he's going in a direction, and there's going to be a ton of problems that come out of it. I guarantee there will be. But is it at the end of the day? Is it going to be bad?
I don't know. Before, the whole space thing was run by the government, right?
Yeah.
And most of the space stuff that they did was, they weaponized.
The skies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but now it's gotten to the point where he's made reusable rockets, which nobody thought was possible before even. And now they're smart enough to land on moving platforms in the ocean, for one. but it also makes sure that every launch that goes up now is a fraction of the price of what it used to be, because you don't just not only have disposable parts and stuff like that that have to be rebuilt and stuff like that. You can reset and get another rocket put together within a couple of days, or refueled and with a new package put on it and sent back up into the sky within days for a couple $1 million instead of hundreds of $1 million per launch.
So if someone gave you a ticket to go up, would you go up?
Hell yeah.
Would you?
That'd be fantastic.
Oh, I'd be scared shitless.
For sure, it'd be terrifying, but that's kind of the joy of it, I think. And I think, well, and listening to
I don't like driving on mountains, so
yeah, well, I think listening to astronauts and stuff talk about like how when you do 16 circuits of the planet every day, and you see how there's no lines up there, like there's no divisions, it's just a single connected planet. And it's like, I wish more people could be up here to see this and see how much their trivial bullshit issues don't matter. Yeah, because we're all one species, we're one living organism on this planet. It's all one system. But it's like, fucking hippies, one system, blah, 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 kind of shit like that too. Immediately there's division on that right away. Right? So
even when they start talking about, we saw things up there that we question if we're the only intelligent life on this planet. Yeah. No, we can't say that.
Yeah, which they're coming out with more and more now that they're, well, and again, another good sign of the times where they're admitting to UFOs and things that they can't explain, and nobody gives a shit. Even right, it's like we're too busy worried about like who said what on Twitter.
Yes. See, I don't have a Twitter account, and I don't have a Facebook account either. So yeah.
Nor I. I just try to stay out of a lot of that unnecessary stuff too. But I mean,
I don't care what you had for supper. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But I mean, again, with the infinite size of space, I mean, it's hard to think that not only are we the only life around, that we're definitely not the most intelligent. I wouldn't think.
I would be really sad if we were.
Yeah, well, similar to us too. Let's like say we want to send something to Alpha Centauri and we actually figure out propulsion where it'll get there within a reasonable amount of time. And are we going to send people, or are we going to send reconnaissance drones and things that can go there and take pictures and send information back? Like a lot of the stuff that we see, I don't imagine is actually piloted by creatures of some sort of biological sort of thing. It's them just checking shit out, and apparently there was an uptick of UFO sightings since the nukes went off in the 40s. And it's like, so maybe there is something larger that it's like, well, they might run themselves into extinction again. We'll see how it goes, but until they can actually get their shit together, we're just going to sit back and watch for a while. Because, I mean, I think it's entirely possible that there was, like during the dinosaur age, there's nothing saying that there couldn't have been an intelligent species of lizards that actually evolved to a point where they could leave the planet, or they saw a meteor coming and it's like, well, we can't live here anymore, we got to go somewhere else. It's entirely possible that could have happened too. But even in 65 million years, there's enough geological change that anything that they had could have disappeared by now under the ocean or folded back into the magma layer and stuff like that. Like, we don't know, that shit could be gone by now.
Who knows?
Right, so yeah, that'd be the thing. This species of super advanced lizard kind of aliens show up. It's like, well, this is actually our planet. I'm glad that you guys have evolved, but we own you now.
Yes.
So
Right. It's funny because when we were leaving supper last night, and Bob was we were driving away and waiting for this family that was leaving the house next door at the same time, and they were older couple, older than us, and the woman took exception to my license plate.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is it?
So her face for license, she told her husband, he looked, he was smiling, and then he saw a license plate. They both were.
What does it say?
Nothing. It's just an alien on it.
Oh.
Really?
Well, that's weird.
That is weird. Yeah, and I assume that, that was a religious, they have those beliefs because, yes, it's not concrete, it's not black and white, so if it's not black and white, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. God, though, that's definitely he's there, or she, or whatever, 100%.
Yes.
I mean, I have zero proof of it anywhere, but he's definitely there.
Yeah, but I have worked with people that have talked to God, so there you go, eh?
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting one. Is that faith or is that a level of insanity? Are we
People
supposed to?
that I talked to, it was a level of insanity.
Okay. Oh yeah, I had a beer with God. Oh, okay, that's different.
Yeah, exactly. Hey.
Yeah, that's always an interesting one because well, I mean, it's the same thing on the other side with scientists and physicists. Like they go on talking about the Big Bang and this everything was created of this infinitely small, hot, dense point, and don't know where that came from, but it's like everything's created because of that. And then the very next breath, oh, God's not real. Well, isn't it exactly possible that both of those things could be real?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
like,
Just ask the physicists what came before the Big Bang.
well, yeah, it's just it. Wouldn't God just hanging out and the emptiness of nothing, and he snaps his fingers, and that's what created the universe? Like,
Another question. The universe is expanding. What is it expanding into?
well, that's always an interesting one too. That one, the known universe is just what we can see, but I mean, everything's subject to entropy. So when we look out 13.7 billion years, is that just until light kind of decays, and that's the sphere that we can see? Is it infinitely further than that, or even twice as big? Even that's
Who
more
knows?
and that's more than we'll ever be able to experience. Even because in 10 million years from now, those people living then won't be able to see what we can see now.
Yeah.
So, how much of it's right?
Yeah.
Even right? And yeah, I mean, there's theories on stuff, and it's like, well, if you have a better idea of what the Big Bang is, then you have to go through all these other Michio Kaku, Japanese physicist, said it's like, well, me and a handful of my colleagues have made this website to say it's like, if you can prove that, then that means you also have to be able to prove this, 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 and this, because like all of our theories are based on these things.
That's right.
And it's like, yeah, am I smarter than a group of physicists? Maybe not. Very likely not.
That's right.
But they're all looking through the telescopes now, like
Yeah.
the James Webb and all that,
Yeah,
in the past, because it takes millions and millions and millions of years for that light to get to us.
yeah,
So we look at it, that's sort of the way it was 100 million years ago.
yeah,
However long it takes the light to get to it.
yeah.
We don't know what it is today.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing to think that in the Andromeda galaxy, that's about 2 million light years away from us. The light that's hitting them now is us just starting to evolve in from whatever basic level hominid starting to go into humans. Like that's what they see of us right now. If they could actually zoom into the Earth.
We're just crawling out of the water. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, we're basically going from apes to like the very first
Okay.
primitive type of human.
Climbing down from the trees.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's basically what they would see of us.
Okay.
So they're not going to come then.
No, like, oh, they got some time.
Really? Eh? Oh.
Yeah, it's such an interesting level of perspective. Or was it Betelgeuse, on Orion's shoulder, the kind of larger star that's 650 light years away. So they're basically seeing, if they could look at us directly right now, they would be seeing the Enlightenment starting, basically.
Okay.
So yeah, like 1500s sort of thing like that, and everybody's wearing these big ridiculous wigs and parrying with their swords and
Smelling to high heaven.
oh boy. Yeah, I got gout. I'm very rich.
That was a measuring stick at that time.
No, there's a lot of interesting stuff when we start talking about the boundaries between like physics and philosophy, and like, well, how much of this are we just guessing at? And you talk, the science is settled on this. Like, well, that's not how science works for one, but in general, like, what do we actually know about this planet or ourselves or
Or the universe. And really, when you look at the bigger picture, really we're quite insignificant as to everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's all the more important that we need to start moving beyond this planet. It's a good cradle, but we need to move past it. We need to grow up a little bit more and move on from it, but not everybody's on that page.
No.
So
No, I'd be too scared to go into space, to be honest with you. I
Well,
would be. And it probably won't happen in my lifetime. I mean, it has happened in my lifetime. They're just doing the outer atmosphere. They're not really going to another planet right now.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, the people that build the rockets don't ride on them, right?
Like the people who Star Wars don't fight them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good idea, but it's like, let's put somebody young and virile in there. They'll figure it out, and if it doesn't work out, there's more of them. No big deal.
Right.
Well, Connor, you might have a chance in your lifetime because they're China and America, I don't know about Russia, but those two powers are preparing to build on the moon.
Yeah.
And more people are admitting, Americans at least, the physicists, that, well, if you're going to go to Mars, you better go to the moon first and figure out a few things before you send people to Mars.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good staging ground. It's a good place to refuel. The gravity's 1/6, so it's so much easier to leave or just orbit and then continue from there. There's lots that can be done scientifically from there, sort of thing too. And I mean, and it's right there. It's
right there.
Easy to communicate with. You only have 1.3 second communication delay.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part with Mars is that it's a 2.5 year orbit. So there's only a small part of our year that you can even go to Mars. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff we can figure out.
All interesting, though, eh?
Yeah, I'm talking about the possibility within my lifetime that I could either go suborbital, orbital, or even to the moon, sort of thing like that. Mm-hmm. It's totally possible. I mean, I don't know if I'd be hanging drywall on the moon, but I mean, I'd go there to do construction. Sure, what the hell?
There you go, eh? Get your welder's license.
Yeah, well, and they even talked about that, like, even just on rough estimation, like something between $20 and $40 billion to build a moon base. I mean, Musk almost bought Twitter for $43 billion. So it's like he himself could fund a moon base, basically, if he wanted to. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not. No.
And the other thing is we certainly have the technology about it. And sure, there's, again, a lot of engineering problems that we don't know about and things that are unforeseen, but until we build them and figure this out, we'll never know. You know, like the whole idea of the Earth being flat, that was proven wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, people went on their ships, and if they just sailed until you couldn't see them anymore, it's like, oh, did they just fall off the edge of the planet? Well, of course not. We figured that one out. It's not a big deal, right? So some of us have to be a little more adventurous and figure some of that stuff out.
You can do that. You can do the adventurous part. Yeah. No, I'm not going to the moon. No, it'd be way too scary. Yeah. But then, what about setting up a base in the sea underwater?
That's harder, from what I understand. Well, depending on how far you go down, I suppose.
They still haven't finished mapping the seafloor yet.
Yeah, that's a big one. Mm-hmm. It's actually harder to put somebody to the bottom of, the Marianas Trench anyways, like the deepest part, than it is to put somebody in orbit. Like, yeah, it's something else. Although there was unmanned seacraft that they put down there, and there was at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, there's a plastic bag floating around. So it's like,
really?
It's like our influence is everywhere. Well, it's to the point I think they're saying something like we're eating enough microplastics that it's equaling to about the size of a credit card per week. And it's like, no, it can't be right. But even if it's a month, though, I mean, that's a shitload of plastic, and that's one. I think that's where we're at now too. That saying whatever, we all went extinct, and however many millions of years passed, there's going to be like a thin layer of plastic over the entire planet. It's like, oh, there must have been some sort of civilization here. Yeah, either or, right?
Well, they're recalling foods right now that have plastic in them. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a mess, and that's never mind the garbage barges that are out in the middle of the ocean, like the 4 major ones that are out there. It's always this is your guys' fault. It's not the manufacturer's fault that made all this shit.
No.
It's like, no, it's all the end user. You guys have to figure out how to clean this up. Like, there's no recourse on that either. Like you guys are making this problem happen, but it's our fault. Like, come on.
Yeah, blame the consumer, right?
As always, the middle class will fix the world because we don't have a choice. Yeah. The poor aren't rich, don't have enough money to do anything about it, and the rich are definitely not going to pay for it. So
no, that's true. Yeah, so that only leaves, I don't think there is a middle class anymore. There's just working class, eh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The untouchables.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean that's the crux of the whole thing is that again, yeah, money draws pretty big lines.
Yeah. We always believe that it's going to make our life so much easier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, money doesn't make you happy. It just kind of takes some of your worries away, or gives you new worries. But
true. Yeah.
So how you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I do have to go.
Yeah. That's why I figured we're 2.5 hours in about now. So
Okay.
shut her down for the day.
Sure.
Sounds good. Right on.
Lovely talking with you.
Thank you.
I love to get to know a person like that.
Yeah, I know, right? Kind of delve into some of that stuff and get to understand them on a different, deeper level. So, all right, let's have a hug and then we'll go to the bathroom.
Don't squeeze it too tight.
Okay.
All right.
Do you want to have some lunch?
Sure, I could have a snack.
Okay. Do you like tuna?